Chapter 1598. At this moment, Han Fei, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, was like a wise man, analyzing the composition of the entire cage. Han Fei had always thought that this cage was in the shape of a sun. In fact, it made sense, but it was still not delicate enough. It was not so much like a sun as an 8. Rather than a 8, it was more like a Tai Chi diagram indeed. When Han Fei knew that there were two such black holes in this cage, the true form of this cage was revealed. This was a super-huge heaven and earth natural array. However, it was not an ordinary heaven and earth natural array. The Tai Chi diagram it outlined was not in the shape of a circle, but it was not in the shape of a 8. So, outside the cage, the heaven and earth natural array must have included an area. Although he hadn't seen the whole picture, with the two black holes in the Tai Chi diagram, Han Fei naturally knew its shape. Han Fei felt that this was probably a natural heaven and earth natural array, or a man-made, semi-natural formation. The large array could absorb energy from inside and outside the cage to maintain the seal of the cage. Perhaps it could absorb more energy from the outside world. This could also explain why the Waterwood Heaven and the Yin-Yang Heaven had very few strong masters. In fact, there was an obvious gap between the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. After all, the number of strong masters in the Waterwood Heaven was far greater than that of the Yin-Yang Heaven. Previously, Han Fei had always thought that this gap was caused by the Eye of the Heavenly Path. However, the Eye of the Heavenly Path could only prevent people from becoming kings, right? It didn't seem to have much effect on people in the respect state. But why was that? Han Fei pondered that perhaps the two black holes in the cage had different ways of absorbing external power. As for what the difference was, he would have to have a chance to see the other Tai Chi to know. In fact, these questions were easy to understand. What puzzled Han Fei was why they set up a heaven and earth natural array here. What was the purpose of trapping these people, sea demons, and beasts? Perhaps this was a means of the human race to stop the sea demons? After all, in the Age of Doom, the sea demons invaded and caused a large number of deaths of land creatures. Perhaps I or a certain powerful person created this heaven and earth natural array with the power of heaven and earth. At the end of the day, this formation was equivalent to a barrier, equivalent to the Great Wall of China. It could stop the invasion of the sea demons. After all, there was the inheritance of the Grand Myriad Mountains here, and it was surely a project from the Age of Chaos without a doubt. Any grand array was actually easy to enter but hard to leave. As far as Han Fei knew, it wasn't difficult to enter the heaven and earth nature array. However, this was a heaven and earth nature formation. Even he had to expend quite a bit of effort to enter. Presumably, tens of thousands of years ago, it was easy to enter this heaven and earth nature formation, which was why so many creatures were trapped here. Perhaps it was because this heaven and earth nature formation was constantly absorbing energy to strengthen the cage. The person who came in was probably trying to increase his strength. As a result, the power it accumulated became stronger and stronger, causing the cage to be locked tightly. As for those who had entered, they would never be able to escape again. But as a master of arrays, Han Fei knew one thing very well. A great formation, can it absorb energy infinitely? Tens of thousands of years? Even if it was a real black hole, after absorbing endless energy, where would it go? Perhaps it was the final eruption. Perhaps the singularity that caused the Big Bang was a super black hole. Why did the Big Bang happen at the singularity? It was very likely that it had swallowed too many things. When the energy of the singularity reached a tipping point, the universe collapsed. Han Fei suddenly slapped his head and clicked his tongue. I'm so King smart. I can't believe this array reminded me of the Big Bang. Hiss. I'm afraid this cage has already reached its limit, hasn't it? Han Fei was dumbfounded as soon as he thought of this. So, the crack was not because the power of the seal was weakening, but because it had accumulated too much energy and was about to explode? Not good. The old turtle was confused. What's wrong? Understanding all this, Han Fei suddenly understood why there were so many strong masters in the cage. There were hundreds of thousands of explorers, because the energy absorbed by the heaven and earth nature formation was also supplied to them when it supplied the barrier of the cage to reduce the pressure of its energy expansion. However, the battle just now resulted in the death of countless venerables and explorers. Then, according to the conservation of energy, the power of these people after they died would either return to nature, be absorbed by others, or be absorbed by this black hole. In this way, if the magnificent energy poured into the eye of the formation at once, it would only accelerate the collapse of the cage. The old turtle asked a few questions, and Han Fei communicated his thoughts with the old turtle. The old turtle said unhurriedly, "If this cage collapses now, the million soldiers of Black Blood City will charge out, and I'm afraid the entire Inyang heaven will be destroyed." Han Fei's face became awful. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that the Big Bang will lead to the death of all the creatures in the cage. However, I think it hasn't reached the level of the Big Bang yet. Otherwise, when the crack appeared, it would have exploded a long time ago. But no matter what, we have to find a way to get out as soon as possible. As Han Fei thought, where there was absorption, there must be a way out. How to get out? Han Fei had already considered it. The suction force in the eye of the formation was extremely powerful. It seemed dangerous, but it should be the only way out. In this array, the energy of the outside world was being sucked in all the time. However, this suction was intermittent, sometimes very violent, sometimes very gentle. Presumably, at the most violent time, when the array was in a state of wide open, he would have the best chance to escape. As soon as the connection was established, Han Fei left Forge the Universe. As soon as Han Fei came out, his whole body began to spin rapidly. Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. In fact, the way to break this array was not very difficult. After thinking it through, Han Fei knew how to break the array. He let the Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel spin extremely fast, opposite the direction of the rotation of the eye of the formation. When they reached an equilibrium, he would be relatively still. This method seemed simple, but Han Fei had been exploring it for many years. It took Han Fei 7 years to find the eye of the formation. Even if he found the eye of the formation, if he didn't know anything, he would probably be trapped in it forever. The Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel rotated against the terrifying rotation force, and Han Fei could feel that he was breaking away and resisting the array. Crack. 10 minutes later, when Han Fei saw a beam of white light, he was thrilled. He finally found a way out. But it was also at this moment that Han Fei's body began to crack. There was no other reason for this. It was simply because his physical body contained too much energy. He absorbed energy with his body, and now his body couldn't hold it anymore. Han Fei immediately dispersed the yin-yang wheel in the sky. His body was still spinning at an extreme speed. Han Fei took out the fishing rod that he hadn't used for a long time and threw it at the white light. The fishing hook broke through the air and seemed to catch something. Swish! Han Fei shuttled like a golden light and broke through the air in the blink of an eye. Bam! Holding a meatball, Han Fei bumped into a gust of wind, crushing a lot of land. Ha ha ha, I'm out! Han Fei was excited. Anyone would go crazy after being trapped in a dark place for 7 years, right? Giggle. However, a figure suddenly appeared, and a chuckle came from his throat, waking Han Fei up. When Han Fei turned around, he saw a dry, skinny old man looking at him with a deep look in his eyes. Yes, the Tai Chi Eye is below the grassland. Back then, Zhao Xianglong had chosen this place for a reason. He just didn't consider that he would be trapped. Now that I've come out, I naturally appear in the desolate tomb. Han Fei was very sure that this was a desolate tomb. When the gust of wind blew past, Han Fei secretly cursed himself for being stupid. How could there be a gust of wind in a desolate tomb? Wasn't it supposed to be soundless? He had never doubted it. As early as when Shui Mutian entered the desolate tomb, he should have seen that this desolate tomb was not simple. However, when he came out of the heaven and earth natural array, he found that all this had been hinted, but he never understood it. Han Fei suddenly remembered that he was a skeleton at this moment. Zhao Xianglong might not recognize him, right? Immediately, Han Fei said with his soul voice, "Senior, it's me. I'm Han Fei, a human, fighting with the sea demons. I was defeated by them, so I had to teleport here to seek shelter." Giggle. Dragon. Zhao Xianglong probably recognized Han Fei. So, his eyes that looked like they wanted to eat Han Fei were a little restrained. However, after seeing Han Fei, the first thing he asked was still the azure dragon. Han Fei couldn't say, "I stole the dragon tail you buried," however. He had gone out several times to look for dragons, but he didn't find anything. This didn't seem to be easy to explain. Han Fei's heart thumped, and a venerable corpse appeared in front of him. Han Fei actually had 2 more of such corpses. However, in case Zhao Xianglong accumulated too much energy, he still didn't take out all of them. Han Fei immediately took out a palm-sized cone-shaped scale and said, "Senior, I was incompetent. I was sneak attacked by the sea demons and the evil dragon and almost died. During the battle, I only took down a venerable in a hurry and grabbed a scale." Han Fei only felt his eyes blur, and the dragon's scale in his hand disappeared. A roar came from Zhao Xianglong's throat. Immediately afterward, Han Fei saw that the scale was crushed inch by Zhao Xianglong. Han Fei felt his blood freeze and shouted frantically in his heart, "Don't be crazy, don't be crazy. Don't be crazy until I'm gone." Han Fei couldn't help but remind him, "Senior, do you want to eat some? I have now found a way to destroy the sea demons and hunt the azure dragon. As long as 100 years, I will definitely be able to rescue you. I can even bring the azure dragon to you." Giggle. Zhao Xianglong turned his head to look at Han Fei, not in a hurry to eat, but said in a hoarse voice, "Your soul is greatly damaged. Your Tao heart is not strong. Can help you." Han Fei was about to say, "How can you help me?" Suddenly, Han Fei saw a big hand pressing on his head. At that time, Han Fei cursed in his heart, "My brain is now in my hand, but you are pressing my skull." However, the next moment, Han Fei felt like a movie was playing in his soul. At that moment, Han Fei seemed to see what he looked like when he first came to this world. Tango and he lived on the edge of the cliff in the heavenly water village. The cave behind the small house was the secret of the 2 of them. Once, they swore together that they would become strong. Han Fei remembered He Xiaoyu, who once said hopefully, "My dream is to become a great fishing master like the village leader." Han Fei remembered that when he met old Jiang, it was the first time he came into contact with the spirit-gathering art, the first time he became a soul warrior with Jiang Qinghua, the first time he went to the Thug Academy, the first time he met Xia Shaochan and the others. Han Fei also remembered his adventure life of exploring the ocean, looking for treasures, and improving his strength. During that time, in addition to adventures, there was nothing but eating. When they were eating, Han Fei, Zhang Xuanyu, and Lu Renquang began to talk nonsense. From the level 2 fishery to the level 3 fishery, making enemies with the Sun family, entering the heavenly desolate city. At that time, when he entered the heavenly desolate city, Han Fei saw the tragedy of the human race for the first time. Looking back, the people of a city died bravely. How sad was that? How resolute was that? These scenes appeared in Han Fei's eyes one by one. In the unknown place, Xia Shaochan was taken away by Chun Huangyan. The heavenly silkworm shocked the world, and he was devastated. At that time, he had made up his mind to kill the mermaids and mermen in this life. Later, his life ushered in a turning point. He entered the reincarnation cycle, and he met Shiman Linglan. He seemed to have lived an extra life. When he was a fool, all he thought about was how to protect Shimin Linglan. Later, when he was awakened, he wanted to fulfill Shimin Linglan's dream and break the pattern of human beings being ruled and oppressed by the big clans. At that time, he unified the City of Justice and carried out reforms and innovations wholeheartedly for the future of the human race. At that time, it was actually very simple. When he recalled these things one by one, he realized that he had been dormant in order to save the scattered Stars Island from disaster and wipe out the big clans. Han Fei was a little confused. Was this Shimin Linglan's wish or his own? Immersed in the past, Han Fei suddenly realized that he had done so many things over the years. For a long time, everyone had regarded him as a savior. Including King Qing, perhaps Old Han and the others had a greater purpose. However, there weren't many people who were as scheming as Old Han. The limit of most people's vision was the king. Han Fei suddenly woke up. Do they want me to be a king? Or do I want to be a king? Chapter 1599. Han Fei didn't expect that other people could help him find his belief. How did Zhao Xianglong see that his belief was not strong enough? Before, Han Fei had always been vague. What was his belief? There seemed to be a lot. Some of his hopes were strong, and some seemed very strong. There were too many things that he had to do. Perhaps this is the reason why my Tao heart is in disorder and not strong enough? For a moment, many people flashed before Han Fei's eyes. Han Fei did feel that there were still many things waiting for him to accomplish after he became a king. Sweeping across the big families, finding Xia Shaochan, beating up Chun Huangyan, rebuilding the heavenly desolate city. I even want to unify the 36 Xiantian realms. All of these, except for finding Xia Shaochan and beating up Chun Huangyan, were the truest thoughts in the bottom of his heart. None of the other thoughts seemed to be his real thoughts. Yes, even sweeping across the big families seemed to be Shimin Linglan's wish, wasn't it? In fact, Han Fei had never been humiliated by the big families. Shimin Linglan was expelled from the family when she was a child. Therefore, Shimin Linglan hated the hypocrisy and intrigue of the big families. And the belief that Han Fei established was indeed not enough. At this moment, Han Fei's soul was beating crazily. In an instant, Han Fei recalled everything he had experienced in this life. The happiest time was in the level 2 fishery. At that time, although Wenren Yu followed him, Wenren Yu allowed him and his team to explore the sea freely. At that time, his life was full of surprises every day. Han Fei suddenly realized that his favorite thing had always been exploration and treasure hunting. It was as simple as that. Just like when he was a captain on Earth and sailed to the ocean. That kind of excitement and that kind of craziness was his deepest desire. The old turtle watched this scene quietly in the depths of Han Fei's consciousness. He didn't know what Han Fei saw. The fire of his soul was beating so violently. Zhao Xianglong was a lunatic. A lunatic looking for a belief for a fool? Would that work? The old turtle could easily tell that no matter what Zhao Xianglong's belief was before, what he used to be determined to do, now it must be to slay dragons. Would he turn Han Fei into a dragon-slaying boy? Suddenly, Han Fei said something that he had said countless times in the past. My journey is the boundless sea. At that moment, Han Fei came back to himself. The soul fire in his eyes flickered as if he had an epiphany. At this time, although Han Fei hadn't made a breakthrough however, the old turtle knew that from this moment on, Han Fei was different. At this moment, his temperament was completely different from before. He seemed to have found himself. He had really found his Taoist heart. The old turtle murmured, "Found just like that?" This guy had spent so much time in the past, but he didn't even know what he was so stubborn about. Zhao Xianglong found it with just a pat? The old turtle did not know that the humans of the 36 profound heavens did not know the standards and methods they used to become kings. Perhaps it was just as he had said. The tortoise was a creature that became stronger when it was asleep. Perhaps he had become a king in an inexplicable manner. However, other living beings were different. The 10,000 races had their own unique characteristic. Especially in a place like the 36 mysterious skies, if one wanted to become a king of a generation, it was not something that could be casually said and become a king. Every king had a unique personality, and they all had different stubbornness. However, all of this was more or less related to their life experiences and insight. At this moment, Han Fei came to his senses and looked at his personal information immediately. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 86, peak intermediate venerable, chaotic energy none, spiritual power greater than 61,646, damaged, perception range greater than 22,000 kilometers, power greater than 9,000 waves, first spiritual heritage unknown, second spiritual heritage unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 75, second spiritual beast king sparrow, level 59, main art void fishing, level 6. Sky stealing technique, venerable level, divine quality. When he saw this information, Han Fei wanted to laugh out loud. Unfortunately, he was just a skeleton now. He just opened his mouth slightly. His strength exceeded 9,000 wave. This meant that Han Fei had broken through the barrier of the intermediate venerable realm, but his strength could not increase anymore because his realm had not broken through yet. The limit of his Taoist heart behind the power of his soul had disappeared. Now all that was left was the current number of souls. This meant that there was no upper limit for the growth of his soul power. Since there was no barrier, once Han Fei's soul power recovered, he could break through the barrier of the intermediate venerable realm in an instant. Immediately, Han Fei clasped his fists and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Senior. I have found my way. But, Senior, don't worry. The Azure Dragon is a great enemy of the human race. I will do my best to take down that evil dragon." Although Zhao Xianglong was crazy, he was still a human being. Although his mind was in a mess, he could still feel human emotions. However, his chaotic brain might not help him clearly judge whether it was good or bad, but at least, Han Fei's performance in all aspects was very good. He was very considerate, just like his own disciple. This made him very comfortable. Zhao Xianglong said in a hoarse voice, "Keep alive until the day I return," Han Fei said. "I will remember." Hearing the conversation between these two, the old turtle only wanted to say that this Zhao Xianglong was simply the dumbest king in the world. As long as he was not crazy, he would definitely be able to tell that Han Fei had been making things up from the beginning to the end. As soon as the grave opened, Han Fei appeared on the grassland just like the first time. When Han Fei looked back, the grave was already far away. And he had reached the edge of the grave and could go out at any time. If he could go out, Han Fei certainly couldn't stay in this desolate grave. Although Zhao Xianglong helped him find his real way. What if Zhao Xianglong went crazy intermittently and suddenly came out to kill him? As a lunatic, what was impossible? As soon as he stepped out of the grassland, Han Fei felt the aura of the outside world. Immediately, Han Fei felt much more comfortable. Fortunately, he came out. If he stayed in that dark space for another few decades, he would definitely be suffocated. Leaving the grassland, Han Fei carried his flesh and soon came to the outside of the Death Valley. When Han Fei was about to reach the Death Valley, he found that Jin Tong was already standing outside the valley, and the Jade Girl was also in the seal. Han Fei didn't know what the seal of the Death Valley was. Why could the Jade Girl only stay in the seal and not come out? But it didn't matter. Jin Tong was surprised. "You really didn't die." Han Fei patted his bones. "I ran into some trouble, but finally I came back safely." This kind of conversation was very strange. An undying covered in deathly aura and a dazzling golden skeleton, it was as if they were two monsters. Jin Tong looked at Han Fei up and down. What state are you in now?" Han Fei's current appearance was too weird. He had never heard of a skeleton carrying a body. Han Fei grinned. The king tribulation caused my golden body to be too strong, but my flesh and blood are a bit weak. For the time being, I just can't merge with them. The corners of Jean Tong's mouth twitched. That's really a good reason. Jean Tong looked back, then turned back and looked at Han Fei strangely. I never thought that an intermediate venerable could pass the king tribulation. Now you say you are the 9th immortal master. I can believe you unconditionally. Ah, it's up to you. But I have to go. I'm here today to pick up my contractual spiritual beast. Looking at little Fatty, who had been staring at him with widened eyes, Han Fei casually put away the defense arrays. Little Fatty was probably dumbfounded too. Damn, he left for a year and he came back as a skeleton? More importantly, he didn't die. In the past year, little Fatty didn't dare to take a step out of the array, fearing that Han Fei would die at any time. Once he went out, he would be killed and his chance of resurrection would be consumed. In that case, he wouldn't be able to resurrect him. Although this fool's master had turned into a skeleton, he was still its master. Little Fatty shrugged. I slept for a year. Han Fei recalled little Fatty into Forge the Universe. You're lagging behind now. You have to work hard to make up for it. Putting away little Fatty, Han Fei looked at Jean Tong and asked, what was the final result of that battle? Jean Tong said, in the battle that day, a total of 128 venerables died in the entire cage. Among them, on the battlefield of the Immortal City, 41 from Black Blood City died, and 32 from the Immortal City died, for a total of 73. 55 died in the Life and Death Gorge, but the Demon Beast Alliance had a false king. Obviously, Black Blood City didn't win. Han Fei didn't say anything but listened quietly. Jean Tong said, on that day, apart from the Venerables, the 7th Island and the 6 Islands had the smoothest battles. After the battle, according to incomplete statistics, as many as 150,000 explorers died in Black Blood City. More than 500,000 people below the explorer level died. About half of the people in the Immortal City died in Black Blood City. As for the explorers, more than 50,000 died. Hearing Jean Tong's description, Han Fei was shocked. Damn it! How much energy returned to the cage? Han Fei suddenly asked, has there been any change in the cage in the past year? Jean Tong looked at Han Fei thoughtfully and said, the environment in the cage is getting worse and worse, and there are more space cracks. Occasionally, energy tides burst out from the space crack. Those below the explorer level are vulnerable to the impact. Han Fei thought, that's right. There were simply too many people who had perished. The Heaven and Earth Natural Array finally transmitted a large amount of energy out to feed so many venerables and explorers, however, within one day, those venerables and explorers were all returned. It would be strange if there were no problems. However, it was just the energy tides. It seemed that there were no major problems. Hardly had Han Fei said that when Jean Tong said, also, there are cracks in some parts of the cage, but we still can't get out. However, it's more likely that we can get out. Han Fei was shocked. A crack has appeared? Damn it, it's not possible now. If the creatures in the cage went out now, it would be an unprecedented blow to both the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. He couldn't even imagine it. Han Fei's heart sank. I have to make a breakthrough as soon as possible. I have to go to the Forest of Horrors first, swallow the ownerless soul in the dragon head, and become an advanced venerable as soon as possible. Han Fei hummed and said straightforwardly, I'm leaving. I will come back when it's time. After a moment of silence, Jean Tong said, okay. However, I think you should go to the human gathering place behind the battle line. Huh. The 3rd chapter. Asking for votes. Moi. Brothers who read this, for the sake of the coherence and reasonableness of the work, some chapters have too many descriptions and logical parts, so I can't help it. However, the plot of the Yin-Yang Heaven should be over in November. No, Fong Ong, end of this chapter. Chapter 1600. Hearing Jean Tong's words, Han Fei didn't know what Jin Tong wanted to show him. However, since he had come out, he didn't mind waiting for a day or two. Let's go and have a look. At this time, the Immortal City should no longer have to worry about Black Blood City's attack. Over at the Life and Death Gorge, 55 venerables had died. Black Blood City didn't have a fake king there, so many venerables must have died. The reason why only 55 venerables had died in the Life and Death Gorge. It must be because the space there was too limited, so they couldn't fight freely. However, even so, Han Fei felt that the number of venerables in Black Blood City should have dropped to less than 190. The once arrogant Black Blood City had lost nearly 100 venerables in just a few years. No matter which faction it was, they would not be able to accept such a speed of decline. Now, in the cage, the Demon Beast Alliance should be the most outstanding. If Black Blood City dared to act rashly again, for example, the Black Killer Snail King left Black Blood City, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, 190 venerables was not a small number at all. It was better than the 80 venerables in the Immortal City, right? Therefore, Han Fei knew that the cage should have fallen into a short period of peace. Besides, Han Fei also realized that it was not appropriate to cause more venerables to die in a short period of time. Otherwise, if the cage exploded and caused all the creatures in the cage to die, or if the cage really collapsed, a large number of creatures in the cage would escape, and the consequences would be unimaginable. In the area between the Immortal City and the human front line, there were countless islands. Among them, the closer to the front line, the stronger the comprehensive strength of the islands. The strength of the cultivators on the islands was generally relatively strong. On the human islands, the first thing all children learned after they were born, apart from learning to speak, was not to discriminate against the immortals. The adults would tell all kinds of stories about how the immortals protected people. However, in the territory of the living, the immortals would rarely go there. Only when there were occasional patrols would the immortals and human experts patrol the island together. The Gale Island was a living island with a length of more than 2,000 kilometers. There were about 3 million people living here, among whom only about 10 were explorers. The rest were all below the explorer level. Such islands were far behind the front line. The only thing to be careful on the island was not to let the sea demon spies sneak in. Therefore, even during peaceful times, there would always be a half-venerable realm powerhouse and many explorers stationed on the island to guard and manage it. Buzz, on this day, the wind resistance competition was being held on the island. The so-called wind resistance competition was related to the unique terrain of the Gale Island. Because there was a concave strait on Gale Island, a super hurricane would form for a period of time every year. Every year, cultivators from the nearby islands would send people to participate in the wind resistance competition. According to the strength of the wind in the wind-resistant strait, from the hanging fishers to the law enforcers, there were teams of contestants of different realms, and they had their own strengths in different areas. On the island, there were also relatively safe areas. These areas were often surrounded by low-level cultivators, and there were also quite a few children. Basically, wherever there was room for people to stand, it was packed with people. Han Fei traveled through the void and was also attracted by this unique game. Originally, Han Fei wanted to observe it. As a result, with a sweep of his divine telekinesis, he saw a statue erected on the island. When he saw the statue, Han Fei couldn't help but be dumbfounded. "Isn't that me? Since when has my statue been erected on a human island?" This Gale Island was just an island that he passed by casually. Just like this, he saw his own statue. That meant that there should be statues on other islands too. However, this statue was too majestic and fierce, wasn't it? Han Fei felt that it was not like him at all. He was such a gentle person. Cough, cough. The statue was built according to his strong and domineering image in the Immortal City. His eyes were fierce and his face was fierce. He stood proudly with his hands behind his back. Those who didn't know him might think that he was a king. However, when Han Fei saw the words engraved under the statue, he couldn't help but be shocked. The ninth immortal master, Han Fei. Tisk Tsk Jin Tong. Is he so smart? Han Fei had been wondering why he felt that his power of faith doubled during the days when he was trapped. It turned out that this was the reason Han Fei couldn't believe that Jin Tong didn't agree to erect this statue. Except for Jin Tong, who else knew about the ninth immortal master? Therefore, this must be Jin Tong's idea. At this moment, under his statue, he saw a young man kneeling in front of his statue and praying. While the Gale Island was watching the wind resistance competition, Wang Hai came to Han Fei's statue alone. Wang Hai looked up at the statue for a long time and finally said, "People worship you as the god of war. I also watched the war last year. Indeed, too many venerables died, and they said it was all thanks to you. However, my parents didn't come back. I know it's not your fault. I just blame myself. I wish I could enter the Seven Islands battlefield and slaughter the sea demons. I wish I could fight to the death in the sea and spill my blood on the netherworld. Senior God of War, can't I become a strong man just by cultivating my physical body?" Wang Hai looked at the statue for a long time, sighed slightly, got up, and was about to leave. However, just as he was about to leave, he felt a voice vibrating in his mind. "Don't you hate this god of war?" "Who?" Wang Hai looked back sensitively. As a result, he suddenly saw a black-robed undead standing in front of him without him knowing when he had arrived. The people on the island rarely saw the undead. Undead usually wouldn't come to the island. After all, the Undying's aura of death was very dense. If one stayed with an Undying for too long, it would be easy for the aura of death to invade one's body and damage one's foundation. But when Wang Hai saw that it was an Undying, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Wang Hai cupped his hands. "Wang Hai greets Lord Undying." Han Fei could tell that the young man seemed to respect the Undying very much. Come to think of it, it was because the Undying were the reincarnations of humans who had fallen in battle. And Han Fei slightly nodded. Han Fei was wearing a black robe and facing Wang Hai, but the kid couldn't tell what he looked like. Wang Hai shook his head. "No. Although my father and mother died in this great battle, they were still able to survive. However, I know that the fall of a few people is for the continuation of the entire human race. Everyone will die one day. I only hope that after I die, I can be reincarnated into an immortal like you." Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, are kids nowadays so mature? Han Fei didn't want to come down. However, when Han Fei glanced at this young man, he found that this boy's chi and blood were strong, but his soul was weak. Obviously, he was congenitally biased. Since he was here, the young man had been kneeling in front of his statue for so long. Although Han Fei knew that this young man was more talking to himself. But after all, he was telling and praying to you. After all, he was the god of war, and his statue was standing here. Since he had met him, he couldn't just do nothing, right? Han Fei said, "Young man, I can tell you very responsibly. If you only cultivate your body, you can also become a peerless master." In fact, Han Fei was certainly not talking nonsense. This was a sudden epiphany Han Fei had when he escaped from the heaven and earth natural array. However, Han Fei gave up this idea. Because if he only cultivated his body, he would definitely be severely biased. Becoming strong for a while would inevitably become more and more difficult. Even so, Han Fei was still sure that there must be such a group of people in this world. They didn't have many resources, nor did they have any powerful techniques, so they could only focus on cultivating their body or soul. Of course, those who persisted in taking a path could become stronger. There was no doubt about this. Although Han Fei wouldn't take this path himself, this didn't prevent him from teaching others to take it. However, it was very difficult to focus on cultivating the body. As long as this child had enough perseverance, it was possible for him to become a strong master. Sure enough, Wang Hai's eyes lit up and he looked at Han Fei in surprise, and then a smile appeared on his face. Thud! Suddenly, Wang Hai knelt on the ground. "Senior, please teach me." Han Fei gladly accepted. Since he was in a good mood, he taught this child a few great techniques. Han Fei said, "Are you sure? You really want to take this path? I can tell you that this path is the path that the god of war in front of you once walked. The path is very difficult. Do you still want to take it?" Wang Hai suddenly raised his head and said in shock, "The path that senior god of war walked?" Wang Hai immediately said resolutely, "I'm willing. Please teach me the techniques, senior. I will do my best to strangle sea demons and protect the immortal city." Han Fei grinned. "Then you have to ask the god of war if he's willing." Wang Hai was stunned. "Well, how do I ask?" Han Fei said, "Just close your eyes and pray to him wholeheartedly." Wang Hai froze for a moment and then nodded solemnly. Then, he knelt down in front of Han Fei's statue and clasped his fists. Seeing this scene, Han Fei casually pointed, and a golden light went directly into the center of Wang Hai's eyebrows. Wang Hai's body trembled, and his mind instantly went blank. But immediately afterward, great techniques flowed in his mind. He could clearly see the 108 spirit-absorbing war bodies, 108 desolate god body, great desolate body technique, and other body-refining technique. Han Fei didn't teach him the indestructible body. After all, not everyone was like him and possessed so many fortuitous encounters, and treasures. If he really taught the indestructible body, this young man might kill himself after practicing it for a short time. At this moment, Wang Hai's sleeves were fluttering and golden light was flowing around him. Han Fei didn't care, but suddenly he saw. There was a tattoo on the young man's shoulder, which seemed a bit familiar. Bam! Wang Hai's clothes exploded. The soul fire in Han Fei's eyes flickered and he was puzzled. Dragon tattoo? The old turtle nodded. It seems to be natural, but not complete. Han Fei couldn't help wondering, is it possible that some people from the dragon-taming heaven didn't die back then? Are they still carrying on the family line here? Just when Han Fei was puzzled, he sensed something unusual and turned his head. "Come out." The next moment, a half-venerable powerhouse walked out. "I'm Zhao Tong. Greetings, venerable master, this is..." Han Fei put his hands behind his back, and his soul vibrated in the air. Although this boy's soul is weak, he was born with great strength. It's up to him to teach him a great technique. Zhao Tong was puzzled. "Why did you blow up his clothes? If you just want to teach him a technique, I won't come out." Han Fei said again, "Zhao Tong, right? When you are free, send this boy to the Forbidden Island. He can go there, but you can't." Zhao Tong. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1601. Han Fei had already made arrangements to take this child named Wang Hai to the Forbidden Island. Han Fei believed that Jin Tong might be interested in this child. However, would Zhao Tong carry out his orders? Han Fei didn't know. When it came to fortuitous encounters, it depended on fate. Even if he left the opportunity, it would depend on the child's luck. After that, Han Fei stepped into the void and didn't watch the game anymore. Han Fei went directly to the Firestone Island. However, there weren't many people on the Firestone Island at this moment. Many of them were injured, and they were all Han Fei's former subordinates. Perhaps they couldn't even be considered subordinate. He was just temporarily commanding them. Before Han Fei left, he asked them to hunt more resources and bring them back. Now, he couldn't fulfill his promise for the time being, since everyone thought that he had died in his current state. He might as well pretend that he had died. This way it would be more memorable. The power of hope was what he needed. His current spiritual chi disassembly rate had reached 81%, which was completely based on the accumulation of a huge amount of willpower. Han Fei estimated that if he slowly deduced this thing, even with Forge the Universe, it would take him decades. That kind of long wait was unacceptable to Han Fei. After all, he was not an ascetic monk, but a person who liked to explore the unknown. Without any reluctance, Han Fei left the territory of the Immortal City. Han Fei felt that smart people should know when to leave. It was meaningless for him to stay in the Immortal City anymore now. Han Fei couldn't say that he had completely solved the crisis of the Immortal City. But at least he had rearranged the relationship pattern in the cage. If the Black Blood City, which had lost nearly 100 masters, still attacked everywhere without a plan, then there must be something wrong with their brains. After leaving the outer sea of the Immortal City, Han Fei felt like a dragon returning to the sea again. At least, this feeling was more comfortable and satisfying than managing the life and death of countless people. About 1,000,000 kilometers away from the Immortal City, Han Fei found that there were people hunting marine creatures here. Yes, the strategy of the Immortal City seemed to have changed too. With the abandonment of the Sea Demon's battle line, there was more and more room for human beings to expand. Of course, this was a good thing. On the way, Han Fei killed a few explorer-level sea creatures. When the void lines absorbed the souls of those creatures, Han Fei found that it was actually possible for him to absorb their soul power as a peak-level middle-level venerable. It was just that, the amount he was absorbing wasn't much anymore. After all, the levels of these sea demons were too low. The soul power that an explorer-level creature could give to Han Fei was about 10 to 30 points. Therefore, there seemed to be no need to attack them anymore. After all, he had to kill nearly 100 of them to steadily reach 1,000 points. And if he reached 1,000 points, it meant that he would have to run around on the sea all day and alert the enemy. Looking at the helpless look on Han Fei's face, the old turtle said, "In fact, it's not that they're feeding you less and less soul power. It's just that the quality of their souls is too poor compared to yours. Therefore, the amount of divine soul power that can be converted into yours will be extremely small. If there are tens of thousands of explorer-level creatures at your disposal, in fact, you don't need to go to the Forest of Horrors to make up for your soul power." Han Fei curled his lips and said, "According to this speed of soul feeding, how many explorer-level creatures do I have to kill? Even if there are so many explorer-level creatures to hunt, their deaths will add too much pressure to this cage. And as long as they are alive, they can continue to digest and devour the energy and spiritual energy in the cage." Of course, it wasn't that Han Fei didn't want to hunt, but he didn't want to lose the big picture. Of course, as long as he was willing, as long as he hunted a few more times, he might be able to attract venerables and quickly restore his soul power. However, once too many strong masters died in the cage, the pressure on the heaven and earth nature array would be too great. The consequences would be far more serious than killing thousands of explorers or a few venerables. At least millions of explorers were trapped in the entire cage. If it were outside, it would be enough to make the yin-yang heavens and the waterwood heavens blood freeze. On the contrary, if the cage exploded like a singularity, everyone would probably be annihilated. Therefore, no matter which result it was, Han Fei didn't want it to happen. 3 days later, Han Fei came to an abandoned sea demon city. This place was filled with void turbulence, and there were all kinds of knife lights, sword marks, rod shadows, and fist energy. Shadows appeared and disappeared in this city. There were ruins everywhere. It could be seen that this city had experienced a devastating blow. All kinds of buildings had basically collapsed. Even so, there were still many Tao-seeking state and a few sea spirit state creatures here. They explored the city in group. The place where the strong fought had become an adventure paradise for latecomers. Here, there might be opportunities everywhere. After all, many sea demon venerables had died. Some venerables had settled down in these cities. The resources they left behind certainly wouldn't be too bad. In fact, there were indeed some. Han Fei saw that somewhere in the city there was a hidden array. Han Fei summoned Little Black and Little White. Little White's perception told him that there was nothing good. After all, Little Black and Little White were now intermediate explorers, and they were very picky when it came to choosing things. Little White didn't like them, and Han Fei naturally didn't like them either. After walking for another half a day, Han Fei saw 3 more cities like the ones he had seen before. It could be seen that when the Black Killer Snail King fought in the Immortal City last year, the Black Blood City must have been attacked by the venerable realm powerhouses of the Demon Beast Alliance. Many cities had been abandoned. Passing by several abandoned cities, Han Fei also found some new sea demon cities. It could be said that there were many things waiting to be done. Many low-level sea demons went in and out, looking very busy. The old turtle asked, "Do you want to go to these cities? Maybe we can rob some good things." Han Fei couldn't help saying, "Am I so easily satisfied now? What good things can there be in these newly built cities? The real good things are in the Black Blood City." The old turtle was speechless. "Wait, do you still want to go to the Black Blood City in your current situation? Do you think your bones are not bright enough, or do you think you don't have enough death energy?" Han Fei was speechless. "What are you talking about? My golden body is bright, but I have the Gemini Divine technique. If I sneak attack them with my Black Fog body, the Black Killer Snail King may not be able to detect me." Okay. However, whether he entered the Black Blood City or not, Han Fei at least had to see where the Black Blood City was. Black Blood City. It was different from the White Shell Royal City that Han Fei had seen. The Black Blood City was also covered by a large array, which couldn't be entered easily. However, this couldn't stop Han Fei. Han Fei stuck to the back of a half-venerable realm big demon and floated in openly. As soon as he entered the Black Blood City, Han Fei found that screw-type buildings were popular here. Here, Tao-seeking state conches could be seen everywhere. Han Fei was speechless. How much did the Black Killer Snail King like its own kind? Was it really okay to have conches everywhere in its home? Because conches might prefer to eat seaweed, there were mainly 2 types of seaweed in this Black Blood City. One was the luminous seaweed, which was used for viewing and lighting. After all, a bright space was better than a dark space. Fish also had their own pursuits. In addition, there was the kind of algae with thick leaves that could be eaten by conches. The entire area of the Black Blood City was actually not much larger than the White Shell Royal City. Its radius was no more than 1,000 kilometers. In this 1,000 kilometers, the real town was only about 300 kilometers. Other places were like the outskirts of the city, sparsely populated, with only a few explorer-level monsters living here. Sea demons and some explorer-level sea creatures were also here. Occasionally, the 2 sides could be seen fighting, but it wasn't the kind that risked their lives. Coming here, Han Fei naturally wouldn't use his perception anymore, but asked the old turtle to inform him. The old turtle said, "There are 92 venerables in the city. It seems that they have completely let go of the battle line in the Immortal City and called back all the venerable experts." Han Fei sneered. "For now, this is the nature of sea demons. They just wanted to rest and recuperate for a while. Once they recover, the battle line will press on again. However, I hope they haven't been annihilated by me by then." Han Fei quietly swam into the Black Blood City. Because he didn't affect the water flow at all, he didn't cause any spatial fluctuations. Therefore, no one would find him for the time being. Even though he was the Black Killer Snail, he wouldn't sweep his house randomly at any time and any place every day. After a while, Han Fei came to a castle-like building standing on the central peak of the Black Blood City. There were buildings halfway up and at the foot of the mountain, all of which were occupied by venerables, and the whole mountain was full of demonic energy. It must be a demon heritage. Seeing the demon heritage, Han Fei's first thought was, "Can I blow it up?" However, this crazy idea was still ruled out by Han Fei. He couldn't lose the big picture for the small. Even if he was in a cage, others might not care about this, but he couldn't. As if he was used to being bold, Han Fei quietly sneaked over. Suddenly, Han Fei sensed that a figure was crazily rushing at him not far away. He didn't need to scan it with his perception to see that it was a big conch. With a bang, that thing knocked Han Fei's black shadow away. Fortunately, he was now in the form of mist, and it was the kind of pure black. And the big conch happened to be black. After being hit by the big conch, Han Fei happened to be attached to it. The old turtle reminded Han Fei, "You're really lucky. It's a demi-king." Because it was too fast, Han Fei heard someone say, "Snail soul, don't be so reckless every time. If I didn't know better, I would have thought that someone was attacking my black blood city." The snail soul slowed down a little and hummed, "You Tianai, don't make trouble. I have something to talk to my king." Yu Tianai sneered. "Don't you know that my king is recovering from his wounds? What's so important about the Forest of Horrors that you have to talk to my king?" At this moment, in the castle at the top, a voice said, "Okay, what's the noise? Both of you, come here." Han Fei didn't expect that he was so lucky. He was going to see an old acquaintance as soon as he came to Black Blood City? Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1602. In the castle of Black Blood City, the palace where the Black Killer Snail King lived. This was an ancient castle made of the shell of the Black Killer Snail King and the molted silkworm. Han Fei could feel the gravity from this place and the looming array patterns. Perhaps the sirens preferred their original forms. When they were at home, the Black Killer Snail King showed up in the form of a giant snail, like a small mountain. The snail soul and Yu Tianai stood at the foot of the giant black snail. The Black Killer Snail King said, "Snail soul, what's going on with the quakes in the Forest of Horrors?" The snail soul said angrily, "King, I think the Forest of Horrors must have become arrogant because we've been greatly weakened. I went to ask about the spatial anomaly, but I was stopped outside. They told me that it was a problem when the Forest of Horrors was offering sacrifices." Listen, they were obviously lying to kids. Who did those monsters offer sacrifices to? "King, I think the Forest of Horrors must be hiding something from us." The Black Killer Snail King frowned. "The Forest of Horrors is so domineering now?" The snail soul nodded. "Of course. I think that if Black Blood City wasn't still strong, I wouldn't be able to return. I wouldn't be able to come back from this trip." The Black Killer Snail King asked, "What do you mean?" The snail soul said, "I feel that those guys are even crazier." Han Fei heard the conversation between the Black Killer Snail King and the snail soul. It seemed that something was wrong with the Forest of Horrors. That was why the Black Killer Snail King sent the snail soul to ask questions. But obviously, the Forest of Horrors didn't care about the snail soul. Yu Tianai said, "Snail soul, is it because you're too domineering? It's not the first time you've done that." The Black Killer Snail roared, "What are you talking about? Don't tell me you think that I have to bully people by running into their territory alone? I just think it's weird. The Forest of Horrors has always been close to us. But in the past year, our relationship has plummeted. That's definitely not a good thing." The Black Killer Snail King said unhurriedly, "One thing for sure is that the Forest of Horrors isn't as close to the Demon Beast Alliance as we are. According to the Demon Beast Alliance, the Demon Beasts won't let the Forest of Horrors go easily. If that's the case, the Forest of Terror wouldn't be too hostile towards us. At the very least, he won't be our enemy. But no matter what, this alliance cannot be broken. UTON make another trip to the Forest of Horrors. Our relationship with the Forest of Terror cannot be severed. After all, the Monster Beast Alliance has already formed an alliance with humans." Yu Tianai immediately said, "Yes, my king." Hearing this news, Han Fei sneered in his heart. This was a good opportunity. Yu Tianai, right? His strength had improved tremendously. I can try to take down a half-king realm powerhouse? If he killed Yu Tianai, would it cause hostility between Black Blood City and the Terror Forest? However, as soon as he thought of this, he heard the old turtle say, "Don't you consider the stability of this cage?" Han Fei's heart sank. He had forgotten about it again. However, it was still challenging for Han Fei to kill a demi-king level expert. Unfortunately, the old tortoise was right. Although it was very tempting to kill a half-step monarch realm monarch. However, for the sake of the big picture, Han Fei decided to leave it alone for now. Or rather, why did he have to kill Yu Tian'ai? If he pretended to be a demonic plant of the Forest of Terror, the entire 1,000-mountain ancient realm would be in his hands, and he hadn't used it yet. It would be a waste. The snail soul snorted and looked at Yu Tian'ai. I'd like to see what you can get out of her. The snail soul and Yu Tian'ai didn't seem to like each other. However, with the Black Killer Snail King around, they were safe. The Black Killer Snail King, however, suddenly exclaimed in surprise. He scanned the entire Black Blood City with his perception. He said, "Snail Soul, did anything happen on your way back?" The Snail Soul was confused. "No. I didn't encounter any obstacles." The Black Killer Snail King nodded slightly and thought, "Maybe I'm overthinking." He said, "Alright, Yu Tian'ai will go to the Forest of Horrors again. Snail Soul, try again and see if there's still a chance to save the crack in the cage." "Humph, Han Fei is already dead. You can consider entering the Yin-Yang Heaven again." The Snail Soul asked in surprise, "My king, didn't you say that there are a lot of experts in the Yin-Yang Heaven? If we split up and go again, wouldn't that leave Black Blood City empty of power?" The Black Killer Snail King said, "It doesn't matter. Recently, the turbulence of energy in the cage has become more and more violent, and the crack in the void has multiplied. That's not a good thing. We have to make preparations in advance." Han Fei was intrigued. Did Black Blood City have other cage cracks? The Black Killer Snail King wasn't a real king after all, and it didn't notice Han Fei, who was right under its nose. It was just like when Han Fei was still a beginner explorer. Peaceful didn't notice Han Fei at first glance. Anyway, he wasn't going to kill Yu Tian'ai right now. Han Fei simply attached himself to the shell of the snail soul and left the city. On the way, the snail soul snorted and said to itself, "Leave the cage? How can it be so easy? I've finally found a way out, but I almost collapsed. That damn place is filled with void storms. How can I find a way out?" Han Fei listened to the snail soul's complaints. Led by the snail soul, they found the place where the void storms were. In the void, there was a crack that was more than 300 feet long. It looked like an eye. Billowing energy and spiritual energy filled this place from all directions. Han Fei's first thought was, "Is this the Saint Realm that the Black Killer Snail King created in the Yin-Yang Heaven?" But there was still a big difference in size and shape. This place seemed to have just been formed. Numerous spatial rifts were opening and closing within the pitch-black spatial rift. Every time they opened and closed, a void crack swallowed a large amount of energy and spiritual energy. Then, a new crack appeared in the void again. "Hiss," Han Fei said in shock. "Old Yuan, is the cage leaking energy to the outside world in this way?" The old turtle said, "This method can't last long. Because this cage is too solid, it has endless energy to maintain its supply. There shouldn't be many places that can crack the void. The speed of energy leakage is almost negligible compared to the two huge eyes of the formation." There was a venerable guarding this crack. When he saw the snail soul, he immediately said, "Master Snail Soul." The snail soul nodded and said, "Yes, I'll keep an eye on this place. You go somewhere else." "Yes, master." After the venerable left, the snail soul sat cross-legged in this place that was full of energy and spiritual energy. Her big shell began to glow, and energy and spiritual energy quickly gathered. Han Fei was speechless. "You're already a half-king. Why do you still need to cultivate? If you keep cultivating, you'll have to pass the king's tribulation." The snail soul suddenly sensed something. Because it had absorbed a lot of energy, it scanned it with its senses. Han Fei quietly peeled off from the snail soul and left quietly. He was just passing by Black Blood City. It was important to get a general understanding of their situation. Since they couldn't go to the Inyang heaven, it was time for him to tease Yu Tianai. As soon as he left Black Blood City, Han Fei's speed naturally accelerated. Han Fei tracked Yu Tianai's location with the nautical panorama. It turned out that she was still in Black Blood City. Of course, Han Fei didn't panic. Slowly, Han Fei came to a place about 1,000,000 kilometers away from the Forest of Horrors. In fact, some oily algae had already appeared here. Because they were oily and sticky, they were all stuck to the bottom of the sea. It looked as if the bottom of the sea was covered with a layer of carpet. Han Fei was sure that these algae had no consciousness. Therefore, he stayed here and waited for Yu Tianai. 1 day. 2 days. It wasn't until the 3rd day that Yu Tianai finally arrived. Besides, Yu Tianai seemed to be here for a vacation. She didn't move fast. The old turtle had long sensed Yu Tianai's arrival, so he had informed Han Fei. From afar, Yu Tianai saw a 9-headed serpent grass that was more than 300 feet high blocking the road. When Yu Tianai scanned it with her senses, the 9-headed snake grass began to shrink. Soon, it turned into a humanoid youth with a 9-headed snake whip. Halt, intruder. Han Fei wasn't worried that Yu Tianai would see through him. With his current strength, he didn't need to be afraid of her. Besides, it was the old turtle who helped him disguise himself. With the power of an emperor, it was easy for him to confuse a half-monarch. Yu Tianai narrowed her eyes and said, "Half-king? I didn't know that there was a half-king 9-headed snake grass in the Forest of Horrors. Besides, Sir 9-headed snake grass, rumor has it that you're a land demon plant, right?" "Humph! Don't compare me with the 9-headed snake grass. I'm a dark hydra. Are you Yu Tianai? Why are you here?" "The snail soul just left." Yu Tianai asked, "Did you talk to the snail soul?" Han Fei sneered. "I don't know the snail soul. However, I've been ordered to oversee this place. I won't see anyone from Black Blood City." Yu Tianai sneered. "Do you think you can represent the Forest of Horrors?" On Han Fei's head, 9 snakes stuck out their tongues. "Why? Is there a problem?" Yu Tianai sneered. "I haven't seen you, so I don't want to talk to you. You can find Ziluo or Qianlong." "Ha ha ha. Who do you think you are? Do you think you can see anyone you want? Do you think I'm the king of Diablo?" "Yu Tianai, I'm giving you a way out. Isn't it enough that you lost in the Life and Death Gorge and the Immortal City? Now you want to challenge the Forest of Horrors?" 3rd update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1603. Han Fei would like to challenge a half-king again. This would help him realize his current strength. However, Yu Tianai didn't want to fight with Han Fei. They were both half-kings. Han Fei had left the range of the Forest of Horrors and blocked the way. However, this also made Yu Tianai realize the attitude of the Forest of Horrors more clearly. Yu Tianai felt that the fake king of the Forest of Horrors must have transferred the experts who were familiar with the Black Blood City away. They even arranged for a half-king expert who had never shown up in Black Blood City to come out. However, this made Yu Tianai even more certain that something must have happened in the Forest of Horrors. Moreover, they had made such a big noise that they refused to meet with Black Blood City. This was not a good sign. As Han Fei said, Black Blood City didn't gain any advantage in the Life and Death Gorge and the Immortal City. Nearly 100 venerables had died. Under such circumstances, they couldn't afford to offend the Forest of Horrors. Yu Tianai smiled faintly. "Since Your Excellency Darkness has made it so clear, it would be rude of me to ask again. However, I still have to say that Black Blood City is much more powerful than you think." Seeing that Yu Tianai didn't want to fight, Han Fei didn't provoke Yu Tianai and insisted on fighting with him. That would be too deliberate. He didn't know what secrets the Forest of Horrors had. However, he was sure that he had aggravated the stalemate between them and Black Blood City. Seeing Yu Tianai leave without hesitation, Han Fei asked, "Did he really leave?" The old turtle said, "Yes." Han Fei curled his lips, but he didn't leave in a hurry. Han Fei took out the 9 palace ruler of fortune and calculated his fortune. He saw a tie lot. This meant that there should be no special accidents today. Han Fei didn't plan to kill for a while. Therefore, this infiltration was just a simple one. His purpose was to find the other Tai Chi eye of the heaven and earth natural array. Then, he would take the dragon's head, swallow the dragon's soul, and become a mid-level venerable. That was the most important thing. Half a day later, when Han Fei saw the seaweed wall, he narrowed his eyes. The seaweed wall here was much larger than the one in the Level 3 fishery. Most notably, the Level 3 fishery had seaweed walls instead of seaweed. The difference of a single word was like the difference between heaven and earth. The main plants in the seaweed city wall were all kinds of seaweed. Within the wall of seaweed, the main plant was seaweed, followed by seaweed. At a glance, Han Fei found that the seaweeds here were made of dozens of different types of seaweeds intertwined. This seaweed wall was at least 1,000,000 kilometers wide. Above the seaweed wall was the seaborne prairie. Similarly, the sea grassland here was much more terrifying than the one in the Level 3 fishery. In the Level 3 fishery, it was a place full of poisonous barriers like a reed marsh. On the other hand, there were all kinds of mouths on the seaborne prairie. Some were like straws, some were like man-eating flowers, and some had furry tentacles. In the sky above the seaborne prairie, small swirls of spiritual energy were rising one after another. Han Fei exclaimed, "Old Yuan, these seaweeds are really edible. According to this method, these seaweeds will leak much more energy than that so-called void storm in Black Blood City." The old turtle was confused. It can't be that simple. With such a vast sea region, how many experts would be created if they followed this method of absorption? Go in and have a try. Before, Han Fei could only cross the seaweed wall by going underground or by force. However, it was obviously inappropriate for low-level cultivators to enter this place. Here, even the plain-looking seaweeds were not low-level creatures. Name venomous tooth seaweed. Introduction: a mutated seaweed that has been contaminated by impure energy for a long time. The venomous tooth seaweed is self-aware and has a brain. It can release poisons according to the abnormal movement of the water and unleash its fangs, causing a range of poisonous barriers to stimulate and alert other seaweeds of intruders. Level 68 quality rare, mutated, spiritual energy greater than 9,883 points, effect, inedible collectible venomous tooth, absorbable. Han Fei glanced at the seaweeds and found that the entangled dozen or so seaweeds were basically of the same level as the venomous tooth seaweed. Some released poison, some paralyzed the nerves, some created illusions, some corroded the soul, and some parasitized them. In short, there were all kinds of them. Among them, there was an explosive seaweed. Its algae leaves were like curled-up little hammers. Once it discovered an enemy, it would immediately explode, and its strength was not weak either. The stronger ones could reach the power of an explorer, and these were the demonic plants that Han Fei saw with the naked eye at the outermost edge. Once he entered it, there would be countless creatures like the divine seaweed octopus. After all, it was easy to hide a few kinds of aquatic animals in such a terrifying seaweed wall. Of course, no matter what, it couldn't stop Han Fei now. After all, under the Gemini divine technique, Han Fei was like mist and water, and he was a mass of pure darkness. As long as he didn't make any noise, even if he stuck close to the seaweeds, they wouldn't find him. Han Fei soon discovered why there were so many suckers on the surface of the sea. It was because there were also void cracks in the seaweed wall. Once a void crack appeared, a large area of seaweeds would be shredded. And in order to make new seaweeds grow, a lot of spiritual energy was needed. 3 days later, in order not to make the slightest noise, Han Fei sneaked in the seaweed wall for 3 days and 3 nights. Fortunately, Han Fei could enter Forge the Universe to rest. Otherwise, even with the Gemini divine technique, it would be difficult for Han Fei to cross the dense seaweed obstacle so perfectly. In the seaweed wall, although the old turtle sensed the existence of a powerful creature, It was not on Han Fei's route. Therefore, Han Fei didn't pay any attention to it. However, at this moment, when Han Fei was about to leave the seaweed wall, he encountered a venerable realm creature guarding it. Han Fei took a deep breath. The seaweed wall covered such a large sea area. Why did he encounter a venerable realm creature? Perhaps, for plants, nothing was impossible. After all, Han Fei had been with the water fairy for a long time and knew that the various life characteristics of demonic plants were very unique. At this moment, the weird demonic plant that Han Fei saw was called Void Vine. This demonic plant, only part of it was exposed in the seaweed wall, and most of it was in the void. It looked extremely weird to the naked eye, like a vine that was cut off from nowhere. At least, for ordinary cultivators, they didn't know the concept of the void, so they must think that this thing was broken in half. Maybe they even thought that it was their chance when it was dying. Fortunately, Han Fei could still read its information. Name Void Vine Introduction. This is a vine that grows in the void crack. It is born to control the great way of the void and can freely grow in reality and in the void. It is good at the art of void exchange and the Tao of void loss. It is good at spatial rifts and void piercing. Because of its mutation, its vines contain highly toxic. Level 84 Quality, Legendary Variant, Great Way Unreadable Effect, Inedible Collectible Void Liquid, Unabsorbable. As soon as Han Fei read this information, he heard the old turtle say, "This is a void vine, a rather rare demonic plant that can use part of the great way of space. This kind of creature doesn't have a body shape. Maybe one of its tentacles grows here, and the other grows thousands of kilometers away. It can even cross tens of thousands of kilometers. Because of this, the void vine is very difficult to hunt. If you can kill this kind of thing, you'd better kill it as soon as possible. Once this thing grows up, it will be a headache." Han Fei said helplessly, "How to kill it? You said that its body can cross tens of thousands of kilometers. No matter how fast I am, I can't cross tens of thousands of kilometers in an instant." The old turtle sneered. "Yes. The old turtle said, "I'll teach you later. Anyway, you can't kill it now, so it's useless to learn it. Slow down a bit. The void vine is extremely sensitive to spatial changes. This thing might even be able to sense your body of darkness." Han Fei couldn't help but chuckle. "Fine. You can hide it all you want, but I'm going to take it anyway. If I can't cross tens of thousands of kilometers in an instant in the future, let's have a chat." The body of the black fog quietly passed through the void vine. Just when Han Fei was about to cross it, a large section of the void vine's tentacles suddenly drilled out. Han Fei immediately dispersed and turned into tiny particles of invisible dust. Han Fei's speed changed from the fast speed just now to that of a mayfly, floating in the seawater, very slowly. Han Fei was very suspicious. Did this thing notice me? After half an hour, the void vine finally retracted its vines, and Han Fei was hundreds of kilometers away. Han Fei couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Phew! A mid-level venerable realm demonic plant actually almost discovered my existence? The old turtle said, "Demon plants observe the world in a different way from other creatures. The so-called 5 senses of human beings, as well as some senses that you humans can't feel at all, may be perceived by demon plants." Han Fei said, "I think you'd better pray that I'm lucky at this time." Crossing the seaweed wall, Han Fei saw a gloomy, weird, dark green world. Han Fei saw a kind of weird demon plant like the twisted jungle on the Scattered Stars Island. These demon plants covered all the places in front of him, forming a forest. The dense, palm-sized, dark green leaves would occasionally fall. Then, one leaf would break into dozens of pieces. Han Fei felt that it would be more beautiful if they turned into peach petals. It seemed that there were not many mobile demon plants in this forest of horrors. After all, demon plants were different from humans. They were plants. Just like the dark green trees that Han Fei saw, each of them was an explorer, and each of them could be regarded as a treasure. At this moment, Han Fei was swimming in the middle of this forest. Suddenly, the seawater trembled. Han Fei didn't feel anything and directly asked the old turtle, "Old Yuan, what's wrong?" The old turtle said, "Energy BEM." In the next moment, a tide of energy directly sent Han Fei flying. "Shoot. There's a lot of energy, but it's extremely messy. I even feel the air of death. What's this?" The old turtle said, "Someone is coming." Han Fei frowned and immediately stopped asking questions. However, after a few minutes, Han Fei saw a giant tree above his head. However, to Han Fei's shock, that thing didn't seem to be a tree, but more like a big octopus with a bark appearance. Han Fei could even see the suckers clearly. This giant tree was no more than 500 meters tall, and its vines, or tentacles, were 3,000 meters long and 10,000 meters long. Wow, it's so big! Han Fei took a closer look, and information popped up in his eyes. Name: Dragon Octopus Tree. Introduction: a mutated dragon octopus tree with a trace of dragon bloodline. Because of the impure energy it absorbs all year round, its life state is between half alive and half dead. This state can prolong its life. The dragon octopus tree is good at dragon stings, and its suckers have many sharp teeth. It can strangle experts who are several times stronger than itself. Level 86 Quality: Legendary, Mutated. Path: Unreadable. Effect: Inedible collectible dragon octopus wood, unabsorbable. Han Fei said in surprise. Another one. He seems to be in a hurry. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1604. Because the dragon octopus tree was stirring a lot and raising tides, Han Fei took the opportunity to get a free ride on it. The dragon octopus tree suddenly appeared in the middle of the energy tide and seemed to be in a hurry. If Han Fei had been a bit slower, he would have missed the ride. This dragon octopus tree might be huge and stupid, but its speed could be described as extremely fast. The octopus head sprinted like a missile, breaking through the water and coming out of the void in the next moment. A minute later, someone said, "Dragon octopus, be quiet. I might think that the Demon Beast Alliance has invaded." It was a weird serpent that spoke. However, it was a vine that had grown into the shape of a serpent. On its head, there was a curved horn that extended to its back. It was 100 meters long and appeared next to the dragon octopus tree. The dragon octopus tree quickly shrank and didn't stop shrinking until it was about 300 meters long. He said, "Oh, Serpent Man, long time no see." Han Fei was lost for words. "Damn it. You're in the same place? Long time no see? You sound like you're separated by 1,000 mountains and rivers. Also, isn't the name Serpent Man a bit too familiar?" Serpent Man hissed. "Dragon octopus. Your memory really isn't that good. We've met 6 times this year." Such a powerful tide of energy had already erupted 6 times this year. Regular energy tides can't wake me up at all. It was only because of your loud commotion that I was woken up. The dragon octopus tree said, "Oh, really? I sensed boundless energy." Serpent Man smiled. 6 times a year. The holy altar must have been crowded. Are we going to transform into human beings? The dragon octopus tree said slowly, "No. We're going to transform into human beings and eat slowly." Hearing their conversation, Han Fei was puzzled. It's just an energy tide. What's wrong with 6 times a year? The old turtle said, "Here we go again." In the next moment, the energy tide came at them again. At that moment, the 9 tentacles of the dragon octopus tree spread out at the same time, like a large net. The countless suckers on the tentacles bloomed for a moment, and they were filled with sharp teeth. A huge amount of energy was sucked into the body by these suckers. It was the first time that Han Fei had seen this way of devouring energy. With such a huge body, wouldn't the amount of energy it consumed exceed the limit of what this thing could handle? The old turtle said, "They are spiritual plants and can absorb a lot of energy. If he had excess energy, he could just use it to grow." Therefore, they grew up quite quickly. When these demon plants cultivate, they consume a lot of energy. Han Fei said leisurely, yes. The mouth of the giant python next door is like a black hole. Along the way, Han Fei found that when he passed through the dark green forest, all the plants he saw spread out as much as possible to absorb energy. Any energy ripple that passed through the seaweed wall would basically be eaten up. Even if it did, it wouldn't dissipate too much. Along the way, Han Fei also saw the sea bamboo man, the poisonous dragon sea urchin, the colorful sponge. These strange mutant venerables were all on their way. Han Fei was surprised to find that the plants here were all mutant creatures. This kind of mutation completely turned them into complete monsters. They became freaks that were neither plants nor animals. However, the strength of these creatures couldn't be underestimated. In short, after crossing millions of kilometers along the way, Han Fei had encountered more than a dozen venerable demon plants. At this moment, Han Fei, who had been attached to the dragon octopus tree, was listening to a group of demon plants talking. Serpent Man said, "Everyone, since the frequency of outbursts in this holy altar is so high, let's just stay here and cultivate around the holy altar." A colorful sponge that had no eyes and no mouth and looked like a ball responded, "Many people have already done that." A humanoid old man carrying a bamboo and wearing a straw hat said, "It's not necessarily a good thing to cultivate outside the holy altar. The violent energy at the beginning is too heterogeneous, and it's easy to intensify the mutation and lose yourself." A woman with a purple wreath on her head sat on the dragon octopus tree at some point and smiled leisurely. "It's not very far anyway. Besides, most of the time, it's the Blood King who cultivates there. Who wants to see him every day?" Listening to their conversation, Han Fei immediately realized that the holy altar was the place where the energy tide broke out. However, Han Fei sensed it again and still felt that the energy tide was too messy. It was like the waste that was thrown out after the pure energy was extracted. Cultivating under this kind of energy every day, it would be strange if these demon plants didn't mutate. After a moment, when Han Fei followed the dragon octopus tree and the other demon plants to the so-called holy altar, he was dumbfounded. Han Fei and the old turtle exclaimed in their hearts at the same time, "Another array eye?" Han Fei was stunned for a long time. He had been searching high and low for it, only to find it by chance. Han Fei had planned to find it with the nautical panorama. Who could have known that he would reach the array eye of the Heaven and Earth Nature Array as soon as he entered the Forest of Horrors? This huge array eye was exposed in the Forest of Horrors, about 10,000 kilometers in diameter. Han Fei knew that the real array eye was definitely much larger than this. What he saw in front of him was just the appearance of the array outside. He heard the old turtle said, "You must be a bit careful. There are a total of 58 demon plants near this array eye. Among them, 4 are at the half-king realm. This doesn't include those demon plant experts who can compete with you in terms of strength." As soon as the old turtle said that, Han Fei saw a tremendous amount of impurities spewing out of the so-called Holy Realm Devil's Cave. Han Fei could even see a dense, aurora-like glow. Han Fei immediately frowned and said, "Old Yuan, it seems that there's something wrong with our previous judgment. The real place that absorbs energy should be the array eye of the Forbidden Island. And this array eye is more likely to be used to expel impurities. Look, what kind of strange things are these demon plants?" The old turtle said, "No matter how heterogeneous the energy is, it's still energy. Although this place seems to spit out energy, why is it the most this year? And, according to them, this is the 6th time." Han Fei said, "This means that the Forbidden Island has eaten too much. They have eaten too much there, so they have to expel some impurities." The old turtle was speechless. "You are so disgusting." Han Fei was speechless. What's going on in this old turtle's head? Han Fei snorted. "What I want to say is, why did Zhao Xianglong put the dragon head here? If he wanted to punish the dragon head, he should have put the dragon head and the dragon tail on the Forbidden Island. What else can they do here except to be hit by the heterogeneous energy? The old turtle said, "If you want to know the reason, you have to go down and have a look. Only then can you know." Huff, Han Fei thought for a moment. Since I can come out from under the Forbidden Island, I can definitely come out from here. However, when I came out of the Forbidden Island, I met Zhao Xianglong. Zhao Xianglong was an old acquaintance, and would take care of me. But after coming out from here, it might be different. I hope this trip will be worth it. Han Fei said, "At this moment the energy is erupting. I can't go in with my strength. I have to wait until the energy tides stop. Old Yuan, I'm going to enter Forge the Universe first." Wait a minute. Suddenly, the old turtle's action made Han Fei puzzled. What did old Yuan find? The old turtle said, "I seem to feel the aura of an acquaintance." An acquaintance? Han Fei couldn't help but laugh. Don't be ridiculous. What era are you from? It's the age of gods. You have an acquaintance? If your acquaintance is here, we will all be doomed. However, the old turtle shook his head and said, "No, it is also your acquaintance." This time, Han Fei couldn't laugh. My acquaintance? And in this forest of horrors? Even if he racked his brains, he couldn't think of who it was. At this moment, he saw a large area of red roots, which were intertwined like blood vessels, covering the sky. The surrounding temperature suddenly rose at this moment. And it didn't rise by 1 or 2 degrees, but by thousands of degrees. However, Han Fei had already forgotten about the temperature. When he saw the roots, Han Fei was shocked. Are these the roots of the 10,000-year-old big red trunk? He had dug up the 10,000-year-old big red trunk before. However, although these roots looked similar to the 10,000-year-old big red trunk, their quality was obviously much stronger. At this moment, he saw a young man in a black robe. The lower half of his robe was a root, and the upper half was a human. At this moment, he was standing on the large root. Blood King. Many venerables respectfully saluted the young man. As Han Fei expected, this should be the fake king of the Forest of Horrors. The young man nodded slightly and said with a chuckle, "Everyone, the energy tide of the holy altar is getting more and more frequent. It seems that my efforts have finally paid off. My efforts have finally shaken the cage. And now, I confirm that the passage connecting the cage to the outside world may be opened within 100 years, or even earlier." Wow! Around the eye of the array, many venerables exclaimed. What? The energy tide was stirred up by the Blood King? At this moment, this was the only voice that could be heard in the presence of the fake king. However, Han Fei could clearly see that on his side, Snake Man and the others didn't seem to believe it. The Blood King didn't seem to take it seriously. He pretended to be relaxed and said, "Today, I can send some venerables out of the cage first. Of course, it is also necessary to bear the danger of the void passage. Does anyone want to come?" Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1605. When this Blood King said that he was the one who stirred up the energy tide, Han Fei didn't believe him. This guy even lied to his own people. Was it just to strengthen his dominance? But then he heard something else. This Blood King can send people out? Are you King kidding me? In the outside world, there were only the Yin-Yang sky and the Waterwood sky. There had never been any powerful demonic plants in the Yin-Yang sky. In the Waterwood sky, the 3 major forces were very unique. How could they accommodate these demonic plants? Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, if this Blood King really had the ability to send people out, why didn't he go out himself? Judging from the reactions of the other demonic plants here, they obviously didn't believe this guy. Demonic plants that could cultivate to the venerable level were not fools. Someone said, "Lord Blood King, since the passage can be opened in 100 years, we're not in a hurry. When the passage opens, we can go together." Wouldn't that be much more convenient? Someone echoed, yes. Anyway, we have a long lifespan. It's just 100 years. It doesn't matter. Immediately, a few powerful demonic plants began to echo. Han Fei was stunned. This was the most useless false king he had ever seen. You're already a false king. Why don't you show some king aura? The young man seemed to be used to this scene. He smiled faintly. I won't force you. You can also wait for 100 years. The strong movement of the holy altar and the devil's cave indicates that a great horror is coming. Today, I'm just here to tell you that if no one goes out, I'll go out myself. Many people were shocked. The Blood King was going to leave the cage? Today? Immediately, Serpent Man, Dragon Octopus Tree, and the others all moved. A false king expert was going to break out of the cage today. This was definitely not a trivial matter. Those who had just voiced their doubts were also dumbfounded. Could he really leave? He heard the Blood King say, "This king came here today to invite all of you to witness the eruption of the cage holy altar. Let's see how I break out of the void and leave the cage." Hummed the Blood King's voice, accompanied by the scouring of the energy tide, sounded particularly intimidating. Immediately, Han Fei saw a withered vine with many tiny snakes coiled around it. It said leisurely, "Since Lord Blood King is leaving, we will naturally attend the ceremony." For a moment, this energy tide didn't seem so fragrant anymore. Compared to swallowing energy, breaking free of the cage was more likely to affect their hearts. Han Fei felt that if it were him, he would rather fight with the Demon Beast Alliance every day if he had a chance to leave. This was especially true for those super experts who had reached the half-king realm. It was impossible to become a king in the cage, but it might be possible outside the cage. In reality, if they really went to the Waterwood Sky, as long as the three great monarchs didn't interfere, they might really be able to transcend their tribulations and become monarchs. Therefore, many people immediately followed the Blood King to watch the ceremony the moment they arrived. Smack! On the back of the Dragon Octopus Tree, the purple-haired girl said, "Dragon Octopus, follow him. I want to see how he's going to break out of this cage." Alright. Han Fei glanced at the holy altar's Devil's Den. Although his goal was the Devil's Den, he had already found the Devil's Den and the energy tide was still erupting. He couldn't go in now. He might as well follow him and take a look. The Blood King was obviously lying, but he was about to get out of the cage himself. Even Han Fei began to feel puzzled. The reason why the Forest of Horrors was called the Forest of Horrors was that the demonic plants here were too big. There were 7 or 8 of them as big as the Dragon Octopus Tree. They didn't even hide their bodies. Some of the demonic plants were still disguised. After traveling for about 1,000,000 miles, the Venerables came to a place burned by flames. This was a kind of sea fire that looked like blood and covered a radius of 100,000 miles. On this land, Han Fei was surprised to find the big red trunk. His first thought was that this Blood King was a big red trunk that had become a spirit. This explained why he was so hot. Only a strange creature like the big red trunk would burn at the bottom of the sea all day long. When talking about the big red trunk, Han Fei couldn't help but think of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City of the Waterwood Sky. If this Blood King was the big red trunk, then what was his relationship with the Blood Sea Divine Wood City? The old turtle suddenly said, "Yes, this familiar aura is the aura of the evil king." Han Fei was shocked. "You mean the mysterious king of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City?" The old turtle said, "Probably. I'm a dignified king. How can I not know such a trivial thing? Although the evil king has never shown up, you stayed outside the Blood Sea Divine Wood City for a long time. I'm used to this aura." Han Fei asked, "You mean the Blood King is related to the Blood Sea Divine Wood City? He has been in contact with the one in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City?" Han Fei was shocked. If the two were related, then if the Blood Sea Divine Wood City could gather so many venerable supermasters at once, its strength would probably jump to become the strongest in the waterwood sky. If all the demonic plants in the Forest of Horrors went there, this force would be enough to sweep the waterwood sky. The Cloud Sea Divine Tree and the White Shell Royal City together would be no match for the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. At this time, a group of people had entered the Blood King's territory. Although they didn't like fire, they were all venerable supermasters after all, so it was not a big deal for them to endure it for a while. However, there were still some complaints. For example, the purple-haired girl on the back of the dragon octopus tree said bluntly, "I hate fire. It makes me want to fight." The withered vine said, "Ziluo, bear with it. After all, the Blood King is going to break out of the cage. This is a big deal." Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Looking at the woman with a disdainful smile, he remembered that this was the woman that Yu Tian'ai wanted to see. The venerables ran, and in a moment, they came to the center of the big red trunk forest. They saw that there were hundreds of cracks in the void here. Those cracks ranged from dozens of feet in size to hundreds of feet in size, and their thickness was uncertain. In these cracks, slippery vines of different thicknesses stretched out from them and pierced into the sea. Due to the sheer number of these slippery vines, they pierced through everything within a radius of dozens of kilometers. Han Fei had never seen such vines before. They didn't look like the vines of the big red trunk, so it was possible that they were the Blood King's main body. The Blood King stood in midair and looked at the cracks. Due to the energy tide of the Holy Altar's Demon's Den, this king has forcefully opened up a void and has already made contact with the outside world. You might not believe it, but this king can let you take a look at the outside world. Upon hearing the Blood King's words, someone immediately said, "Lord Blood King, what does the outside world look like? Lord Blood King, please show us. Lord Blood King, don't hide it." Han Fei also looked curiously at the Blood King. He saw countless vines suddenly extend out from his lower body and pierce into the ground. Following that, the slippery vines that burrowed into the void began to expand. Among the cracks that filled the sky, a rift that was more than 300 feet in length was forcefully opened up. Ka, sounds could be heard continuously, like glass cracking. However, everyone could see that there was a strange energy rapidly repairing the cage from the cracks. Energy surged from the Blood King's body, and the terrifying power caused the tide that had just swept over to gather directly at the Blood King. The crack was getting bigger and bigger. Suddenly, everyone saw that on the other side of the crack, there was a relatively blurry water, where red fish were swimming. Puff, a tentacle reached out and pierced a big fish in an instant. As the slippery tentacle quickly retracted, the cage quickly closed. Squeak, with a cry, Han Fei saw a Millennium Snapper that had been caught and appeared here. Only then did Han Fei realize that there were no Millennium Snappers in the big red trunk here. Han Fei felt that something was wrong. The dragon octopus tree and even Ziluo seemed to be shocked. Serpent Man exclaimed, "This creature is only in the sea demon realm. The outside environment can allow such a weak creature to survive. It seems that the outside world is much safer than the cage." The people of Sea Bamboo couldn't help but say, "Lord Blood King, can you watch a little longer? We can't see what the outside world looks like." Someone echoed, "Yes. Lord Blood King, haven't some people been sent to the outside world by you before? Why don't you let them speak and describe the outside world?" The Blood King said angrily, "Do you really think I'm a god? You've seen how difficult it is to open this channel. Besides, because of the chaos in the void, the place I open is not fixed, so I can't find someone to talk to you. Today, I'm going to go out by myself. I can forcibly open the channel in a short time at the cost of 30% of my cultivation. But it won't take more than 2 minutes. Whether you go or not, it's up to you. That's all I have to say. What's your choice?" When the Blood King said this, Han Fei and the old turtle said at the same time, "No." He had to admit that the two of them were quite in sync. Han Fei sneered in his heart. "You think you're so great. Outside is the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, which is guarded by a king. If you go there, you'll either be enslaved or die. Even if the Blood King goes there himself, it won't be easy." The old turtle said, "No. The Blood King must have gone there long ago. Otherwise, where do you think those big red trunks came from? He's just luring these demon plants." Han Fei said in surprise, "That's true, but what's his purpose in luring these demon plants? Does he need to recruit a large number of demon plant powerhouses for the Blood Sea Divine Wood City?" The old turtle said leisurely, "What if this Blood King and the King of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City are the same person?" Han Fei, Part 3. Asking for votes. More. End of this chapter. Chapter 1606. Han Fei was stunned by the old turtle's idea. He was dumbfounded for a long time. Shoot, Han Fei couldn't help but feel horrified. It was not impossible. Well, maybe the possibility was very high. This was the only person he had ever seen who could use his own strength to open the cage formation, a false king. However, did the false king have the ability to open the cage of the heaven and earth natural array? It was obviously impossible. If he could, the false kings of the Demon Beast Alliance, Black Blood City, and the Immortal City were not weak either. It was said that the king of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City had never left the city. However, he once fought the Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor alone. Therefore, the Blood Sea Divine Wood City had a considerable status in the Waterwood Heaven and became one of the three major forces. However, who said that a person who could fight two kings must be a king? Creatures like demonic plants were usually very powerful in their own territory. If the Blood King was the mysterious king of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, why did he want to trap these demonic plants? These people could all become his hired thugs. The old turtle said, "Don't you think it through? But if you think about it from another perspective, what if the one in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City is his reincarnation?" Han Fei. Shoot, Han Fei was horrified again. This means that the guy in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City is actually not a false king, but a half-king. He hasn't passed the king tribulation yet. Then, if he really calls these demonic plants over, they may not be able to suppress them. So, the Blood King's real purpose is not to take them out but to kill them? The old turtle said, or to swallow them, or to enslave them. But in any case, this evil king should be ready to pass the tribulation. Han Fei wondered, "Why do you think so?" The old turtle said, "If the one in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City is really the reincarnation of this Blood King, then why did he call the Blood King over now? After all, the reincarnation and the original body are two different people, and they haven't completely merged yet." Han Fei thought for a moment. However, these two are equivalent to the same person. Then, can this Blood King block the lightning tribulation when he passes the king tribulation? The old turtle said, "Theoretically, he can, as long as their origins are the same. However, to ensure that nothing goes wrong, combining the two in the end might be more reliable. I still don't think it's necessary for him to kill other demonic plants, unless doing so can help him transcend the tribulation. Old Tortoise, you'll have to wait until you can really sneak into Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Right now, no one knows what's going on the other side. After all, if these demonic plants really chose to go over, they would definitely die. However, these demon plants are all sea demon plants. They are close to sea demons and don't get along with you humans. It doesn't matter if they die or not. But we can't let the Blood King transcend the tribulation successfully. Just in case our guess is right. This fellow was able to challenge two monarchs at the half-martial monarch realm without being defeated. What would happen if he became a king? At this moment, no matter what, Han Fei couldn't let the Blood King successfully lure so many people away. Not even the Blood King could leave. He had promised the Life Queen that he would help her wipe out the Blood Sea Divine Wood City and the White Shell Kingdom in the future. If the Blood King could even challenge emperors, at that time, he would have to go to the sky and kill this guy. Han Fei sighed. Old Yuan, do me a favor and destroy this exit. The old tortoise was speechless. My soul quality is just a little bit better. You want me to destroy this exit in front of so many people? Isn't that courting death? Since he couldn't stop it, he could only make trouble. On the dragon octopus tree, a speck of dust flew away. What did they say next? It didn't matter anymore. The Blood King's purpose was to fool those people. And these people didn't seem to trust the Blood King so much. This could be taken advantage of. The energy tide was still erupting. Every time it erupted, it was like a shock wave, sweeping across the entire forest of horrors. In this turbulence, it was very easy for Han Fei to escape without worrying about being discovered. 20,000 kilometers away. A half-martial monarch realm cultivator could still clearly perceive such a short distance. Even a peak-level venerable could feel the eruption here. Han Fei directly threw out a large number of ultra-quality demonic stones and detonated them. Rumble, just when many people were tempted by the Blood King's words, they heard a violent roar tens of thousands of kilometers away, instantly attracting most people's attention. The Blood King was stunned and looked directly at the place 20,000 kilometers away. However, dozens of demonic trees were blown to smithereens. Zi Luo, Sea Bamboo, and the others all changed their expressions, because in the range of the explosion, there was even seawater gathered into words. On it were the words, "The Blood King lied to you and intended to kill you." Han Fei's operation was so simple and violent. Originally, many people had doubts about the Blood King. Now, someone had pointed out this layer of window paper. Who could easily risk their lives to accompany the Blood King to the outside world? Who is slandering me? The Blood King's speed was so fast that Han Fei didn't dare to imagine it. In less than a second, a vine directly drilled out of the ground and appeared at the site of the explosion. At the moment of the explosion, Han Fei had already fled 3,000 kilometers away with the wave. Han Fei could stick to the bottom of the sea and turn into a speck of dust, not afraid of being discovered. Unless this Blood King swept every grass, every tree, and every speck of dust within 10,000 kilometers. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to find Han Fei. This was the power of the Gemini divine technique. Immediately after the Blood King, 3 people appeared at the site of the explosion. Zi Luo said leisurely, "Lord Blood King, what do you want to say?" The Blood King glanced at Zi Luo coldly. "Why, are you doubting me?" Zi Luo smiled lightly and looked at the other two. "I dare not. But what do Qianlong and Sea Bamboo think?" Sea Bamboo smiled slightly. "Lord Blood King, why don't you let the venerables who went out come and have a chat with us? Otherwise, I think it's better to wait for the cage to break naturally." Qianlong said, "I think I can still live for tens of thousands of years. If I reincarnate, it shouldn't be a problem to live for another 50,000 years. It's just 100 years. I can wait." Then, a group of people quickly arrived. Although they didn't speak, they seemed to have their own thoughts. The Blood King snorted coldly. "He's just a junior. Do you think he can scare you just by making a little noise? It seems that I overestimated you after all. I didn't want you to continue to be trapped in the cage. Since you don't believe me, you can stay here." Under the gaze of a group of people, the Blood King still said proudly, "If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it a long time ago. Why would I wait until now? It's useless to say more. I'm leaving. If you want to continue watching the ceremony, you can come and watch." Seeing that his goal had been achieved, although Han Fei also wanted to follow and watch, the old turtle reminded him, "Don't move. The ground is completely covered with vines. He is looking for you." Han Fei remained in the state of dust, not daring to move at all. Only the old turtle could see the situation in the distance with his divine sense. After about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the old turtle said, "That guy has opened the void. However, the vine tentacles underground haven't completely left. He is still looking for you." After more than 10 minutes, the old turtle said, he got into the void crack. However, those slippery vine tentacles are still stuffed in the space crack. There are also some remnants of vines underground. He didn't really leave. He should have left a clone, which should be half a king. Han Fei wondered, is he gone? The old turtle said, the space he went through is closed, leaving only a crack of a few dozen feet. Obviously, most of his body has gone there. Han Fei wondered, at this time, he just went there? He didn't even take a few more breaths of the tide that erupted from the holy altar? The old turtle said, he still has a half-king clone. There are very few clones left, only in dozens of vines, probably to avoid suspicion. You can come out now. As the dust floated, Han Fei quietly leaned forward. When Han Fei was thousands of kilometers away from those people, he found that the temperature here began to drop rapidly. Many big red vines began to wither, and gradually turn into dust. Ziluo and the others were also puzzled. She said, it seems that he really left. I didn't find any clones or anything like that left. Qianlong nodded. His roots have all been taken away. These trees have also withered. However, these void cracks are still there, and there are still roots inside. I'm not sure if he has completely gone out. The Sea Clan said, this guy has never done what a king should do. He has been thinking about getting through this cage every day. Someone laughed. It's good that he left. Anyway, I don't really trust him. In the past tens of thousands of years, he has sent more than 50 people out. In the end, I don't believe that there aren't any good friends out there who would try to help us open up the passageway. But none of these people appeared. Someone agreed. Yes, the Blood King is not trustworthy. However, we really have to pay attention to the problem of the Holy Altar and the Devil's Cave that he mentioned. This year, it was indeed abnormal. It erupted 6 times in a row. It's a good thing, but it feels strange. Chilla. All of a sudden, a vine appeared out of thin air. More and more vines appeared, and after a while, they formed a twisted face. It was the void vine that Han Fei saw. The void vine said, I feel that someone has broken into the forest of horrors. However, the spatial fluctuations are very small and extremely difficult to detect. Just now, I blocked that area immediately, but I couldn't find him. Sea Bamboo said, why did that person remind us? Maybe it's a mutant of the same race who just doesn't want to show up. Ziluo said, it's unlikely to be the same race, but we still have to be careful. A lot of things have happened recently. The Demon Beast Alliance, Black Blood City, and the Immortal City have all participated in the war. Only the Forest of Horrors is safe. Anyway, the Blood King doesn't care about it, so it doesn't matter if he leaves or not. But we can't let out the news of his leaving. I suggest we block the Forest of Horrors. Qianlong, I agree. Sea Bamboo, I agree. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1607. Han Fei didn't care whether these people wanted to block the Forest of Horrors or not. Anyway, it didn't matter to him whether it was blocked or not. At this moment, although he had exposed a liar, Han Fei wasn't happy about it. In fact, the Blood King didn't really leave. His clone was still lurking here. Therefore, all of this was just a self-directed, self-acted scam. And now the scam was blown up, but the Blood King's purpose should not have been fully achieved. Otherwise, there was no need to leave a clone here. He could just go out and become a king. In fact, whether Han Fei came or not, the Blood King was going to do this. It was just that. Han Fei just happened to arrive and ruined his plan. From the words of these venerables, Han Fei could clearly feel that they didn't like the Blood King at all. It didn't even matter whether this person existed or not. The Blood King had just left, so they didn't carefully search this area. After all, even the Blood King didn't find anything. What was there for them to find? This group of people hurriedly rushed back to the Holy Altar Devil Lair. Only the Void Vine was still wandering here for a long time. The vines came out from here and there. Who knew what he was doing? Half a day later, Han Fei also returned to the holy altar. In his heart, Han Fei cursed, "Old Yuan, is there no effective way to deal with this void vine? Just kill it? This thing is too annoying." The old turtle said, "This void vine is not strong enough. He is much weaker than you. If it weren't for so many demon plants here, you could kill him at any time." Han Fei was speechless. "Nonsense. If it weren't for these demon plant venerables, I would have killed this guy long ago." 2 days later, the energy tide finally stopped erupting. Half of the demon plant venerables around the holy altar had dispersed. Those demi-king and peak-level venerable demon plants wouldn't stay in this place and wait for the energy tide to come again. Only a few demon plant venerables below the advanced venerable realm stayed here. As soon as the energy tide was withdrawn, Han Fei crawled into it. Unlike the other side, the energy here poured out. The power produced in an instant was terrifying. If it erupted, Han Fei wouldn't be able to rush over at all. Fortunately, the energy was no longer erupting, and Han Fei could find a way to get in. This Saint Altar Devil Cave was a bottomless pit. Han Fei entered the endless darkness and let his body fall. After only half an hour, Han Fei felt a suction force. Is there also a suction force inside? At this moment, it was already dark in all directions, and even the old turtle couldn't find a way out. Han Fei seemed to have returned to the feeling of being trapped in the array core before. However, as soon as he entered this place, he felt that the energy here was too heterogeneous. The degree of heterogeneity was far greater than the energy on the other side. When all kinds of weird powers tried to drill into Han Fei's body, Han Fei naturally rejected them. He covered himself with a layer of formation and took out the 9-palace fate ruler. The ruler began to float, and soon, it landed on the great inauspicious lot. When he saw this hexagram, Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, "Old Yuan, it seems that the dragon head is much more powerful than the dragon tail." The old turtle asked, "Do we need to make any preparations?" Han Fei shook his head. "No. No matter what I do now, my body will absorb energy. Even if I extract the chaotic energy, there will be a steady stream of energy pouring into my body. If this goes on, my body will explode. Great and auspicious, hee, as long as it's not a desperate situation, everything is fine." At this moment, Han Fei had already become one and turned into his true body. The indestructible golden body carried the flesh and blood on its back, controlling the nautical panorama to look for the array core. Sure enough, the nautical panorama had the same effect as the other Tai Chi eye. As if the instrument had malfunctioned, it began to spin crazily. According to the rotation ability, Han Fei controlled the puppet to walk in the opposite direction of himself, calculate the circumference, and then find the center point to find the array core. Since this trick worked on the other side, it was naturally applicable here. Sure enough, although the calculated distance was a little off, it only took Han Fei 2 days to find the location of the array core. And this time, what Han Fei saw was a white round eye of the array. On the bright white light, Han Fei saw an extremely weird-looking monster, but there was no dragon head. Han Fei looked at the thing that was more than 2,000 meters long and looked like a pile of rotten wood roots, full of confusion. Was the dragon head replaced? Wait, Han Fei compared it to the real dragon head and found that the shape of the huge rotten wood was somewhat similar to the dragon head. However, on this dragon head, there were too many long tentacles or vines that looked like withered tree vines. Besides, it also had 8 dragon horns, which seemed to be composed of a kind of weird red flower. Han Fei was silent for a moment. "Old Yuan, is the dragon head we see parasitized by a demonic plant?" The old turtle nodded. "I'm not sure if it is parasitized. However, it seems that it has been filled with mixed energy and mutated." Han Fei wanted to go closer and see if the demon purification pot would show any signs. However, once he approached it, it meant the beginning of the battle. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, let me try it first." Han Fei used the Gemini divine technique and descended directly in the form of a white mist. Oh! The moment Han Fei approached the white platform, a dragon's roar rang out. Tens of thousands of void thorns appeared. Han Fei's reaction was very fast. He stepped on the soul-driving array under his feet and the 100-beast soul-devouring roar burst out. The embroidery needle in his hand had already performed the heavenly god's stab. Gotcha! Bam! 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 The soul-driving array was broken too fast. Although many soul thorns around Han Fei were shattered by him, many still fell on him. The heavenly god's stab bought Han Fei a little time to rebuild the soul-driving array. In a head-on confrontation, Han Fei didn't win any tricks, but he didn't suffer any losses either. But the next moment, this platform began to be covered with weird shadow vines. Han Fei kept flashing in the air in a short distance. The infinity water gathered around him and tangled with the large shadow vines. Ho! Another dragon roar. This time, accompanied by the dragon's breath, the wind was poisonous. Han Fei protected himself with spiritual energy, but it was instantly corroded. Before he could fight back, a giant vine whipped him and slapped him away. The power of that blow almost broke Han Fei into halves. At the moment when he was in the air, countless void soul thorns instantly pierced him. However, not far away, Han Fei's indestructible golden body appeared. And the one that was pierced was just Han Fei's afterimage. The body of white mist had already merged with the Gemini fusion at that moment. Ho! Han Fei said, very strong, a half-king. With the Gemini divine technique, I'm no match for him alone. The old turtle said, the combat power of a half-king. This is not good news. At the very least, judging from the battle just now, the soul in this body might not be a newborn soul body, but a mutated soul body. Han Fei added, and this dragon head has already turned into a demonic plant. Does it mean that if I stay in this array for a long time, I will become a demonic plant? Whoop! At this moment, Han Fei saw a lot of energy drilling towards the dragon head from all directions. That guy had just fought with Han Fei and was a little exhausted, but now it was swallowing energy. The old turtle said, it seems that you guessed wrong. In Han Fei's eyes, the blue soul fire was jumping. Yes, he guessed wrong. This dragon head could actively absorb energy from all directions. It seemed that other venerable demonic plants had come in and were swallowed by it. Han Fei couldn't help but say, I see. The array I under the Forbidden Island absorbs energy, and the place where the energy is the purest is. On the contrary, the array I here is emitting energy all the time. Just now, the reason why there was a suction force when we came in was because its tidal storm had just passed, which produced a retraction force. Usually, the energy release of this array I is relatively slow. So, when the energy is gathered to a certain extent, an energy tide will erupt. The old turtle nodded. Well, this dragon head must have swallowed more than one demonic plant venerable that had entered this place, causing it to mutate. Han Fei said, I'm afraid that their souls have also been fused. Just now, in addition to the dragon roar, there were other soul attacks. No, I have to try again. In the second experiment, Han Fei still used the Gemini divine technique. However, this time he attacked with his black mist body. After sneaking over, Han Fei suddenly launched a divine stab and 100-beast soul-devouring roar. This dragon head had never encountered an opponent like Han Fei. It was inexplicably attacked before it even found anyone. Puff! The divine stab directly pierced the dragon's soul. There was a dragon roar, but it was not the dragon head attacking Han Fei, but it was roaring in pain. And the effect of the 100-beast soul-devouring roar shouldn't be great, because the dragon head didn't pause for long because of the 100-beast soul-devouring roar, probably only less than half a second. Immediately afterward, a semi-arc-shaped divine light shield composed of soul power enveloped the entire platform. Not good, it's a great path domain. Trapped in this great path domain, it is the absolute master. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei saw that in the void, countless tentacles stretched out and clasped at him. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't let it get what it wanted. A storm of golden fist marks blasted out. The infinity water turned into a blade purgatory, intending to strangle this dragon head from the periphery. A large number of void cracks appeared, and those fist marks were eventually sucked into the space cracks and disappeared without a trace. Roar! Next, another new skill appeared. The rolling sound waves, the sound waves of different frequencies, directly stunned Han Fei. Once again, the Gemini fusion was activated. Han Fei stood on the periphery, looking at the dragon head quietly, the soul fire in his eyes jumping. Interesting, it did swallow more than one demonic plant venerable. Second, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1608. Han Fei's 2 attempts ended in failure. It turned out that this dragon head had long been conscious and had actively swallowed multiple demonic plant venerables. In addition, it had swallowed too much chaotic power, resulting in an inexplicable mutation. Now, this dragon head could no longer be called a real dragon head, but a freak. Han Fei's heart sank. In this case, the possibility of getting ownerless souls from this dragon head was not high. Just when Han Fei was thinking that this trip might be a failure, the old turtle suddenly said, "Look, it's twisting." Han Fei looked at the platform and found that after the dragon head fought with him, the vines, sound waves, shadow thorns, dragon roars, domains. These messy energies were still there and sweeping each other. Han Fei was stunned. "What's going on?" The old turtle said leisurely, "It seems this dragon head can't completely control these abilities. Or rather, the original owners of these abilities. Their consciousness hasn't been completely extinguished. So, this dragon head is just relying on its powerful soul power to forcibly suppress the will of these demonic plant venerables." Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei's eyes lit up. "So, I actually just need to keep interfering with this dragon head? When the dragon head can't hold it anymore, I'll retreat and let it kill each other." The old turtle nodded. "That's very possible. However, sneak attacks shouldn't be of much use. If you send a clone over alone, no matter in terms of strength, spiritual power, or means, it won't be enough to compete with the dragon head. You can't shake it, and it can devour energy from this void at any time. How long do you think you have to sneak attack it before you can make it confused?" The soul fire in Han Fei's eyes flickered, and he suddenly thought of a great misfortune. The old tortoise was right. If he sent a clone of the Gemini divine technique in, he could only burst out a powerful force in an instant and barely compete with this dragon head. Once that moment passed, he wouldn't be able to resist the dragon head's attack at all. However, Han Fei had even tried a desperate divination. Why would he be afraid of a great misfortune divination? Although there was no chaotic chi to change his luck now, Han Fei's strength was not what it used to be. Earlier, when Han Fei fought against a half-king in his strongest state, he could only hold on for 5 seconds at most before he was beaten up. But now, Han Fei's pure power had reached 9,000 waves, which had exceeded the upper limit of an advanced venerable. In fact, he wasn't weak even among peak venerable realm experts. Coupled with the power of the Great Tao, in terms of strength in the half-monarch realm, even that strength-type half-monarch from the Black Blood Royal City, the Trinity of Strength, was no match for him. Han Fei couldn't go any further now. This battle must be fought. It didn't matter if they fought earlier or later. Han Fei rested for a day, and then continued to attack with the Gemini divine technique. This time, the black and white mist bodies entered the platform at the same time. This time, Han Fei was immediately enveloped by a domain barrier. But Han Fei didn't panic at all. The dragon head's domain power could only find his body of black fog. In terms of combat, the dragon head's strength was limited. After all, it was impossible to break out of this cage. Therefore, the limit of its strength could not be much higher than his. At most, he would be in a little danger, but it wouldn't be a big deal. Sure enough, the dragon head used a barrier and Han Fei used the blade purgatory. The dragon head attacked the soul with a shadow stab, and Han Fei used the soul-driving array. The dragon head roared, and Han Fei used the 100-beast soul-devouring roar to fight back. Han Fei couldn't hear the power of the sound waves at all now that his 5 senses were blocked. But the void was compressed by the sound waves, so Han Fei had to fight back with the invincible fist seal. This was a competition of strength, and it was only a competition of the number of means. But in fact, Han Fei and the dragon head were equal in strength. After holding on for 10 seconds, Han Fei combined the two into one. At this moment, the soul fire in Han Fei's eyes flickered violently, and his aura surged. The dragon head slightly opened its mouth and began to swallow the energy in the array eye. Han Fei shouted, "There's a forbidden technique here." Suddenly, the dragon head's swallowing power stopped abruptly, and the soul fire in Han Fei's eyes flickered, and he rushed directly to the dragon head, hammering it with both fists. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, thousands of punches and tens of thousands of hammers. Han Fei had been waiting for this moment. He had been madly consuming the energy of the dragon head at the beginning. When this dragon head needed to swallow energy, he would have a hand-to-hand fight with it. Those rattan-like dragon whiskers lashed at him one after another. Although the huge force was no match for the strength triple connection, Han Fei estimated that it was at least 15,000 wave. However, at this moment, Han Fei had burst out with a terrifying force of 20,000 wave. Hiss, Kacha! The dragon whiskers were torn apart by Han Fei one after another. Wherever the fist light and fist shadows passed, the vines withered and the dragon blood splashed. After 100 seconds, there was no monster here. It had been completely torn into a bloody and bare dragon head by Han Fei. Before, those strange vines, tentacles, and big horns were all removed by Han Fei. Unlike the dragon head, Han Fei's infinity water would not be restricted by the forbidden technique. The infinity water had its own characteristic. After all, it was just a weapon. Therefore, the vines and flesh torn off by Han Fei were easily shredded into pieces. At the moment the forbidden technique ended, Han Fei took the initiative and attacked with the 100-beast soul devourer and the heavenly god spike. Wherever Snowmorn passed, frost spread, the soul fire in Han Fei's eyes flickered. He was as strong as this dragon head, and there was no sign of great danger. In that case, the only possibility of a great calamity was a battle between the divine souls. However, Han Fei knew that he had the demon purification pot. Therefore, in the battle of souls, he had no reason to lose. When the void lines clasped the dragon head, in an instant, several kinds of chaotic soul power impacted Han Fei's soul one after another. Han Fei's soul power was not weak. He quickly read the souls for a moment and found a pure and bloody soul of slaughter. This soul didn't have the memories of the dragon race, but it was full of darkness and devouring. At the moment when the souls collided, Han Fei could feel its coldness and killing intent. However, the old turtle said, as expected, the original dragon's soul couldn't hold on. It was devoured by this new soul body. However, this new soul was too bloodthirsty and crazily devoured other demon plant venerables, which led to its madness and extremity. Han Fei waved the heavenly god spike crazily. Golden blood was flowing out of the meatball, which was the result of the collision of souls. "I'm going to kill you!" Just as Han Fei and the dragon head soul were fighting for control, suddenly, a cold message was sent to Han Fei. In the next moment, the void exploded and a storm was formed. Han Fei's indestructible golden body couldn't help but roar. It turned out that the soul of the dragon head had actually detonated the soul of an Exalt realm expert that it had devoured. In such a narrow space, Self-detonating one's divine soul was definitely a move that would harm one's enemy by 1,000, but also oneself by 800. However, the dragon head didn't care. This was the first time that it had been attacked by someone, so it had to kill this person no matter what. Han Fei was wounded in one blow and lost more than 1,000 points of soul. Han Fei immediately knew that he couldn't go on like this. It wasn't easy for him to accumulate soul power. He couldn't fight this dragon head to the end. Apocalyptic divine technique. This time, Han Fei directly sacrificed his 1,000-year vitality to perform the apocalyptic divine technique. The 1,000-year vitality at this moment was completely different from the apocalyptic divine technique when Han Fei was still an explorer. At this moment, Han Fei's 1,000-year vitality was enough to repair the foundation damage of dozens of venerables and eliminate evil spirits. A pillar of light suddenly descended from nowhere. There was a burst of roars and slaps, and a large amount of dirty energy seemed to be burning, emerging from the dragon head. It was like a vampire basking in the sun and then turning into smoke. Roar. BM. In this case, Han Fei grabbed a holy light and used it as a knife. Puff, puff, puff. Han Fei wanted to cut off the dragon head. Clang. After the violent collision, Han Fei was a little dumbfounded. Although this dragon head had mutated many times, it was once a king-level creature. In terms of the strength of its flesh and blood, it was not something that he could cut. The vines that grew in the later stage were still fine, but once they went deep and cut the dragon bones, Han Fei's full blow only cut some flesh and blood. Since he couldn't kill it, Han Fei could only control the soul of this dragon head. Now, this was the only way to go. After a few minutes, the apocalyptic divine technique disappeared, and Han Fei could clearly feel that the dragon head was powerless. At this moment, Han Fei continued to control the soul of the dragon head. It seemed to be going well. After the time it took to finish a cup of tea, an unexpected situation occurred. Although it was seriously injured by the apocalyptic divine technique, it was a top-level soul born in a king-level body after all. At the moment when the apocalyptic divine technique disappeared, when Han Fei thought he could subdue it, the dragon's soul jumped and directly drilled into Han Fei's forehead from between the eyebrows of the dragon head, trying to possess him. F***ck, Han Fei felt that he couldn't move his body. This dragon soul was trying to control his body? At that moment, Han Fei wanted to use the Gemini divine technique, but his mind was not under his control at all. This dragon soul was trying to stop him from thinking. At that moment, Han Fei was horrified. If he was controlled, he would become someone else's puppet, an extremely powerful puppet. Poochie, Han Fei sneered, and from between Han Fei's eyebrows, a small green vine slowly stretched out. The green vine clasped, and the dragon roared incessantly. This dragon soul probably didn't expect that it would encounter such great danger when it tried to possess Han Fei. After the soul was clasped, the dragon head completely stopped fighting back. The other souls, without the control of the main soul, were in a mess, biting each other. The vines of the demon purification pot rolled up, and a wave of souls was set off on the entire platform. A large swath of blue soul fire scattered in the air. Han Fei saw with his own eyes that a small dragon-like soul was forcibly dragged into the demon purification pot and disappeared without a trace. At this moment, Han Fei knew that the dragon head couldn't escape. Wasn't this the moment that he gambled? The ominous sign must be that his soul was not strong enough. However, he had the demon purification pot, but what did it have? Originally, Han Fei was worried that he might not be able to get any ownerless souls. However, when Han Fei took a closer look, he found that the demon purification pot still left a large number of ownerless souls, large and small. Third, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1609. The soul of the dragon head was directly extracted by the demon purification pot. Han Fei had expected this. As the saying went, fortune comes from risk. If he didn't take some risks, how could he become a king? For a lunatic who was born to be adventurous, Han Fei felt that he was much calmer in the face of danger now. At that time, the soul of the old turtle was also suppressed in the depths of his consciousness. However, the soul of the dragon head was sucked in by the demon purification pot. Not only was the soul absorbed, but the demon purification pot didn't stop moving and stretched out 2 small vines. As the vines rolled, Han Fei saw 1, 2, a total of 27. He didn't know if it was a soul or something else, but it was swallowed by the demon purification pot. The old turtle trembled a little at this moment. This is the great Tao of those demon plant venerables that haven't been completely absorbed and assimilated by the dragon soul. Although the great Tao of these venerables can only be regarded as ordinary, but they were so ruthlessly deprived. The old turtle didn't continue, for fear of annoying the demon purification pot. At this moment, the soul fire in Han Fei's eyes was burning, and his soul was shaking, but he laughed. I don't care. Anyway, these are all deformed creatures and have already died. If they are not eaten by my calabash, they will eventually be digested by the soul of the dragon head. Then they might as well provide nutrients for my calabash. This battle came to an end because of the appearance of the demon purification pot. As early as when the dragon soul was about to possess Han Fei, it was already destined to die. Even the old turtle, a dignified emperor, was detained by the demon purification pot because of the possession. The soul of the dragon head was just a reborn wisp of the azure dragon's soul. How could it compare to the old turtle's? As for the rest, they were all messy, ownerless souls. Han Fei's skeleton body couldn't help but shake, as if he was smiling. The next moment, the soul fire between his eyebrows spread out to prevent these souls from dissipating in the eye of the array. After a full 6 hours of collection, when Han Fei completely collected these ownerless souls, he found that there were more ownerless souls than he had imagined. Although he had guessed that there would be more souls sealed in the dragon head than the dragon tail, Han Fei didn't expect there to be so many. At this moment, Han Fei checked the information repeatedly. His soul power increased from 61646 to 110,683 points. Close to 50,000 points of divine soul power was actually obtained by him so easily. Han Fei sighed. After all the ups and downs of his cultivation, his soul was finally back. Moreover, after his soul power broke through the 9,999-point barrier, it seemed to not be suppressed by the realm at all. Han Fei asked in a hurry, "Old Yuan, my soul power has exceeded the previous limit. It seems to have surpassed the level of a middle-level venerable." The old turtle said unhurriedly, "Realms are determined by people. In fact, as long as your body, spirit veins, bones, race, and bloodline were strong enough, you would naturally be stronger than others. Becoming a venerable king was a small matter compared to those ancient times." Seeing that the old turtle didn't continue, Han Fei asked, "What's ancient?" The old turtle sighed. "Primordial divine beasts and primordial beasts are innately powerful. From bloodline to spirit vein, it could be said that he was favored by the heavens. I admit that you are indeed very lucky and very powerful. However, in terms of level, they are at most similar to me. After all, your spirit veins were constructed by my Tao. Therefore, your limits will also be lower than others. You might think that you're strong enough and that your soul is strong, but that's only relative to people at your level. If you were at another level, you would know what the difference is." In Han Fei's eyes, the soul fire flickered. "What kind of gap?" The old tortoise pondered for a moment before saying, "For example, your Emperor's sparrow. Fighting 2 or 3 of you shouldn't be a problem." Han Fei was so shocked that his blood froze. "What do you mean by the Emperor's sparrow can beat 2 or 3 of me at the same level? What do you take 2 or 3 of me for?" However, Han Fei knew that the old turtle wouldn't lie to him about this. According to the old tortoise, his bloodline and spirit meridians were not high enough to cultivate as a human. As if afraid of hurting Han Fei's self-esteem, the old turtle also said, "However, I won't lie to you. With your potential, it's more than enough to become a king. In the king's realm, among the thousands of clans in the vast sea, you may be ranked among the thousands of people in the same realm." Han Fei was speechless. "How can I be ranked among the top 100? The old turtle said, "I said thousands, not the top 100. Han Fei was speechless. "So, I can't even be ranked in the top 100? Is that what you mean?" The old turtle said, "Don't think it's too little. This is what I calculated for you. The thousands of clans in the vast sea are not really only 10,000 clans. In fact, it is said that there are more than 8 million clans in this world. This is the result of classifying all the similar clans in the same category. Otherwise, there would be more. Can you count how many people there are in each clan? With your luck and aptitude, you can be ranked among the thousands of clans in the king's realm. I don't think it's enough. You know, the human race is just in the middle of the thousands of clans on the race ranking list." Han Fei. At this moment, Han Fei was speechless. "Can't we just have a normal conversation? More than 8 million clans?" Han Fei said, "Hey, do you mean that I am already standing at the forefront of billions of living beings?" The old turtle said grumpily, "Don't be complacent too early. I only said that your strength in the king's realm might be ranked that high. However, it's only because you've had too many opportunities in the past. You're not just carrying your own destiny. Perhaps you're carrying the destiny of the entire yin-yang heaven, or even the waterwood heaven and the cage heaven. After the king's realm, once you become an emperor, maybe you will be ranked behind again." Han Fei immediately had an idea. "Old Yuan, what is your ranking among the thousands of clans?" The old turtle said leisurely, "When you get in touch with the 10,000 clans, you will naturally know. Now, it's useless to say more. I said this because I don't want you to be too proud. I said you are short-sighted, but you still don't admit it. When you get in touch with the wider world, you will naturally know everything." Han Fei slightly retracted his soul. The old turtle's words put a lot of pressure on him. But now, he couldn't care so much. He didn't even know which thousands of clans he was. He only knew that the thousands of clans were called. Han Fei felt that he'd better find a way to continue to improve himself first. If he couldn't even become a king, then what were the thousands of clans? After chatting with the old turtle for a while, Han Fei collected his thoughts and set up layers of large arrays around him. In order to avoid the problem of too much heterogeneous energy here, Han Fei set up most of these arrays, followed by the arrays for energy absorption and spiritual energy absorption. Even though he had done so many arrays, Han Fei didn't want to directly make a breakthrough in this array core. After all, Han Fei was worried that the heterogeneous energy would destroy his potential. In Forge the Universe Breakthrough, those ultra-quality demonic stones, spiritual spring water, and various kinds of energy all swept towards Han Fei. Previously, when he was hunting the sea demon Venerable, he did grab some good things. However, as his strength increased rapidly, Han Fei found that his reserves were no longer enough. Back then, he got 100 billion ultra-quality demonic stones from the Empyrean waterfall, but now he had less than 1/5 left. The spiritual spring water and the like were basically exhausted. According to this trend, whether he could cultivate to the peak level of an advanced venerable was a problem. Because of the king's tribulation, Han Fei had already squeezed himself to the limit in the intermediate venerable realm. As soon as he broke through the advanced venerable realm, Han Fei's mass of flesh and blood shook crazily. The endless energy accumulated in the flesh ball. No, the body. In an instant, it surged to every corner of the flesh and blood, trying its best to fuse into his body, refining his body to the strongest state spontaneously. It took a full 3 hours for Han Fei's body to finally stop feeling swollen. And at this moment, Han Fei's breakthrough was finally completed. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 87, advanced venerable. Chaotic energy, none. Spiritual power 114371. Perception range greater than 42,000 kilometers. Power greater than 9,806 waves. First spiritual heritage unknown. Second spiritual heritage unknown. First spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 75. Second spiritual beast, king sparrow, level 59. Main art, void fishing, level 6. Sky stealing technique, venerable level, divine quality. Good. Han Fei swallowed. He had finally reached the advanced, venerable realm. His spiritual power had also increased by more than 3,000 waves, but it was just a natural growth brought about by the breakthrough of the realm. His strength had increased by 806 wave. Han Fei knew that this was because too much power had been squeezed into his body. Therefore, his strength had skyrocketed. Generally speaking, the maximum power of a peak-level venerable was about 10,000 wave. And a half-king realm powerhouse must be at least 10,000 wave. This was the reason why the venerable realm was a whole new level. If an explorer were to be compared to a venerable one, there was no comparison at all. In the eyes of a venerable realm powerhouse, an explorer was no different from a kid. There were even many venerable realm powerhouses who regarded those below the venerable realm as ants. Naturally, kings also thought the same of venerable realm powerhouses. This was also a normal chain of contempt that seemed to exist everywhere. After the successful breakthrough, Han Fei's body began to slowly disperse. In the end, his flesh and blood covered Han Fei's indestructible golden body. Han Fei immediately felt that his 5 senses had returned. It felt really good to be able to see and hear. Crack, puff, however, as soon as the flesh and blood covered his body, Han Fei only made a few casual movements, and a crack appeared on his flesh and blood. Some of his flesh and blood were torn, but he still couldn't hold it. The old turtle reminded him, although you have made a breakthrough, your bones are also growing. So, you still have to continue to cultivate your body. Chapter 16:10. Han Fei really didn't know what level his indestructible golden body was at now. Since he had experienced the heavenly tribulation, his indestructible golden body had a problem. Han Fei cursed, "It's all that old B****starred Ren Tianfei's fault. What the hell did he create? I've finally mastered the indestructible golden body, but now there's a problem with my flesh and blood." Of course, the root cause of the problem was not Ren Tianfei, but the heavenly tribulation. Han Fei couldn't help saying, "Old Yuan, I've passed the heavenly tribulation. Shouldn't my body have also passed the heavenly tribulation? Why is my indestructible golden body so much stronger, but my flesh and blood don't seem to be stronger?" The old turtle said helplessly, "What do you mean your flesh and blood don't become stronger? In the past, your bones were stronger than your flesh and blood. Now, it's just that the heavenly tribulation has aggravated your problem. Do you remember that, after the third lightning tribulation, you had to use the apocalyptic divine technique to recall your flesh and blood? However, your indestructible golden body has completely survived the heavenly tribulation from beginning to end. Do you think the lightning tribulation has transformed your bones more or your flesh and blood more?" Han Fei. Alas, Han Fei sighed leisurely. He thought that when he broke through to the advanced venerable realm, his state should be able to recover to its strongest state again. But now, obviously, he still couldn't. Although this body could be reattached to the bones, there were more and more cracks. Clearly, it still couldn't bear the heavenly tribulation. In the past, when Han Fei practiced the indestructible tyrant body, he integrated the power of his soul into his bones. However, from now on, Han Fei made up his mind. If he had any ownerless souls, he would definitely stuff them into his flesh and blood. He wouldn't stop until his flesh and blood reached the same level as his bones. In Forge the Universe. A month later, Han Fei managed to maintain his current state. Although his flesh and blood were full of cracks, like a porcelain doll full of cracks. A slight touch of the finger would shatter it. However, this was already Han Fei's best state. Han Fei was practicing the dragon swallowing technique and was sucking a dragon bone. At the same time, his recovered body was absorbing the energy in Forge the Universe to cleanse and reform his body. His body automatically absorbed energy, which was the power of the Great Desolate Body skill. The Great Desolate Physique skill was an ancient skill from the Desolate era. It followed the path of merging the acupoints into one. Moreover, it was different from the only major acupoint of the Desolate God body. The Great Desolate Body skill turned the entire body into a huge acupoint. It was like a leakless body. Energy could enter but not exit, unless the owner wanted it to. Han Fei practiced two techniques at the same time in order to strengthen his body. Han Fei had discovered the benefits of the dragon swallowing technique. With his spiritual energy decomposition speed, he could absorb about 5 or even 6 strands of chaotic energy in a year with the concentration of energy in Forge the Universe. However, with the help of the swallowing technique, it only took Han Fei half a month to absorb the first chaotic power from the dragon bones. This speed was 4 to 5 times faster than directly absorbing the chaotic aura from the spiritual energy. Overjoyed, Han Fei practiced the dragon swallowing technique crazily. However, because the dragon swallowing technique could swallow not only the chaotic aura but also dragon power, dragon aura, and dragon luck. Dragon power could strengthen the body, dragon aura could refine the body, and dragon luck. Han Fei didn't seem to feel it yet. In short, the benefits he could obtain from the Tsang dragon were simply too great. It was because Han Fei had been practicing the dragon swallowing technique that he could stabilize his level so quickly. Otherwise, it would take a year or two for a regular venerable to stabilize his level after a breakthrough. Han Fei, on the other hand, stabilized his level in only 1 month. Even so, Han Fei said to the old turtle helplessly, "Old Yuan, I'm practicing the dragon slaying technique." The old turtle was lost for words. The dragon swallowing technique. Han Fei shook his head. "I don't even know if there are any dragons in this world. I don't know what I can do in the future, whether I slay or swallow dragons. Forget it, I have to practice it for my recovery." 1 year passed. Han Fei could now absorb a dragon bone for 3 days. During this year, Han Fei accumulated 42 strands of chaotic energy. This speed was unimaginable to Han Fei before. Because the speed of absorbing chaotic energy had become faster, Han Fei's mind began to work again. After all, the time chain of Forge the Universe could continue to grow. Next time, the price Han Fei would have to pay was 1,000 strands of chaotic energy. If Han Fei's current speed didn't change, it would take about 24 years. But if Han Fei's speed continued to increase, maybe he could accumulate so much chaotic energy within 10 years. Could Han Fei accumulate that much? Of course he could. Back then, under the Forbidden Island, he dug out half a dragon. There were more than 1,000 dragon bones. That was more than 1,450 yuan. And that was when Han Fei randomly picked big bones and stuffed them into Forge the Universe. If he dug out the whole dragon, there would be at least 5,000 dragon bones. Besides, now he had a dragon tail, a dragon head, and a whole azure dragon's skeleton. Adding up all these, he could be counted as a rich dragon bone. However, spending 10 or 20 years swallowing dragon bones and practicing his physique was a bit unbearable for Han Fei. Although in the eyes of the outside world, this should only be a year. But he really had to stay here for more than a decade. After spending 7 years under the Forbidden Island, Han Fei couldn't bear it anymore, let alone spending more than a decade here. Of course, although he wouldn't stay here for more than a decade, Han Fei didn't plan to go out in a short time. After all, the problem of his physique hadn't been completely solved. He hadn't mastered the Great Desolate Body art, nor had he mastered the dragon swallowing technique, and his physical strength hadn't been perfectly attached to the indestructible golden body 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. At the beginning of the 4th year, Han Fei stopped that kind of repetitive cultivation. At this time, he mastered the great desolate body art. There was no telling if it was because of the success of the great desolate body art, but it took him 4 years to advance from level 87 to level 88 on his own. When the great desolate body art was mastered, Han Fei made a breakthrough. The success of the great desolate body art was mainly attributed to Han Fei's Forge the Universe, which had too much energy, dragon chi, natural spiritual energy, and demonic energy. Under the multiple absorption, it was only natural that the great desolate body art was a venerable level body art. After all, the great desolate body art and the indestructible tyrant body were two different types. The great desolate body art was relatively gentle, while the indestructible tyrant body was too domineering. The moment Han Fei mastered the great desolate body art, he subconsciously made a breakthrough, and then he stopped this numb cultivation. When Han Fei looked at his personal information again, he was a little stunned. Owner Han Fei level greater than 88, advanced venerable, chaotic energy 345 spiritual power 115401 perception range greater than 43,000 kilometers, strength greater than 12,001 waves, first spiritual heritage unknown, second spiritual heritage unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 76. Second spiritual beast King Sparrow, level 59, main art void fishing, level 6. Sky stealing technique, venerable level, divine quality. Hiss! Han Fei immediately shouted, Old Yuan! Old Yuan! I've made a breakthrough. Do you see it? The old turtle said, I'm not dead. Of course I know. Han Fei exclaimed, You've made a breakthrough in 4 years. Old Yuan, I'm cultivating on my own without any help. That's not slow, is it? The old turtle said unhurriedly, Do you know how much spiritual energy and energy you've consumed? Half of the spiritual spring and ultra-quality demonic stones in your gourd world are gone. Based on your cultivation speed and consumption, all the resources you have here won't be enough for you to make a further progress. Han Fei looked at his spiritual spring and ultra-quality demonic stones, only to be shocked. He didn't expect that an advanced venerable would consume so many resources for cultivation. Han Fei immediately thought of Tang Yen. Other people might not know that there were 100 billion ultra-quality demonic stones under the Empyrean waterfall. But he knew it. However, he was unmoved at this moment. Han Fei basically understood Tang Yen. I'm only a high-rank Exalt Realm expert, and I'm exhausting my cultivation resources at an extremely fast pace. How many resources would he need to consume when he became a peak-level venerable or even a half-king? The old turtle said, You should know now. To become a king, the accumulation of energy in the early stage is an astronomical figure. In the Battle of the Immortal City, hundreds of venerables and hundreds of thousands of explorers died. If they are counted as resources, it's enough for 1 or even 2 people to pass the tribulation and become kings. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth and grinned. Resources? It's not a big problem. There are many places where I can take them. Han Fei thought of the Zhang family. He was now an advanced venerable. If he snuck into the Zhang family again, who could find him? By then, he could loot the Zhang family's treasury. After the Zhang family, he could go to the Chu sect, and then go from house to house. Han Fei smiled disdainfully. Resources are not a problem. I'm very good at absorbing chaotic energy now. I'm going to continue cultivating until I run out of resources. By then, it's time for me to go out. Han Fei raised his hand and looked at the cracks on his body. The success of the great desolate body art had made his body much stronger. However, his bones were also getting stronger. However, the strength of the indestructible golden body should have reached a point where it was difficult to improve. There was still a lot of room for the growth of his flesh and blood. Therefore, at this moment, the cracks on Han Fei's body were not as thick as before. Previously, the flesh looked as if it had been glued onto his body. Now it looked like his whole body was cracked. Han Fei thought that as long as he swallowed dragon bones for another 2 years, hunted some venerables, got some ownerless souls, and fused them into his flesh and blood, when he reached the peak level advanced venerable, he should be able to cultivate again. All of a sudden, the old turtle reminded him, "I know that you can continue to trade with the gourd. You can continue to modify the time here. But don't forget, the dragon bones are limited, and they are your fastest source of primordial chaos energy. Once they are exhausted, do you want to make up for them? That's not easy." Han Fei. Chapter 16:11. Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei actually wanted to say that he still had a whole dragon corpse. However, Han Fei, who had recognized the strength of the dragon race, felt that he was still too naive at the time when he made a deal with the Azure Dragon. When he had time, he would go and bargain with the Azure Dragon. That way, it wouldn't be a violation of the Oath of the Way of Heaven. 2 years later, Han Fei had accumulated 709 wisps of chaotic qi. Although Han Fei wanted to stay for another 2 years, maybe he could accumulate more than 1,000 wisps of chaotic qi. However, except for all kinds of refining materials, the spiritual spring and ultra-quality demonic stones in Forge the Universe were all consumed. Originally, Forge the Universe was full of energy, but now more than half of it had been consumed. At the same time, this energy was also improving Han Fei's physique. When the resources were exhausted, Han Fei had to leave Forge the Universe. Almost 4 months had passed in the outside world. When Han Fei appeared in the outside world, he was shocked to find that the thousands of large arrays he had set up had been destroyed. Not much energy was left in this array core. Who? Han Fei opened his mouth, and a large amount of miscellaneous energy was sucked into his body. Immediately afterward, the energy flowed in his body. In a moment, 90% of it was spat out by Han Fei again. This was the unique ability of the great desolate body art, which could devour demonic spiritual energy, savage evil energy, and poison barriers, and transform them into the power to nourish the body. It was said that those who mastered it would be invulnerable to all evils and poisons. However, this energy was too heterogeneous. Even the great desolate body art could only transform 10% of the energy. If it were someone else, they would become a monster after staying here for a long time. At this time, what Han Fei needed was not just a little bit of energy, but a lot of resources. Although cultivating in this array core could provide him with enough resource energy and spiritual energy. However, cultivation was not just about accumulating energy in the body. After strengthening his body, he still needed to go through actual combat. However, before he went out, Han Fei still needed to make some preparations. What if there were many demonic plant venerables waiting outside? What if there were more than one half-king realm powerhouse guarding outside? If he went out, he would definitely be in trouble. Therefore, after preparing some fish skin arrays for himself, Han Fei took out the 9-palace ruler of Providence and calculated his luck today. When the ruler fell on the tie, Han Fei was slightly relieved. After a while, when Han Fei activated the supreme yin-yang image and turned outside, he seemed to have touched the eye of the array. Looking at the energy surging at him from all directions, Han Fei was lost for words. Not good. I triggered the energy tide. It was different from the array core below the Forbidden Island. That array core absorbed energy, so they had to go in the opposite direction. Since this was the direction of the spitting energy, he had to follow it. When Han Fei turned the supreme yin-yang wheel, he couldn't directly turn himself out, but it turned the infinite energy back from all directions. Only when the array core was filled with enough energy would it form an energy tide that would send him out. Fortunately, Han Fei had the great desolate body art. Otherwise, it would be hard to avoid a mutation if one were to be constantly exposed to this heterogeneous energy. During this process, energy and spirit chi were constantly replenished. The supreme yin-yang wheel spun for a full hour. Han Fei felt that if he continued to spin like this, he might be crippled. At this moment, the energy surging in the array core spurted out like a volcanic eruption. When Han Fei rushed out of the array core with the energy tide, he was already ready for battle. After all, it took him more than half an hour to get out, and those venerables should have all arrived. However, Han Fei was surprised to find that there was not a single person here. Where are they? Didn't they say that there was a riot in the holy altar and the energy tide was constantly surging, and some demonic plant venerables had already lived here? But now it was quiet here, and there was not even a ghost. Could it be that something had happened? Han Fei immediately took out the nautical panorama and activated it. The panorama rotated a few times and pointed in one direction. Where the Blood King is. Han Fei immediately used the Gemini Divine technique, followed the energy tide, and quickly rushed to the place where the Blood King had been. Half a day later, Han Fei hadn't reached the place where the Blood King had left before. When he was still hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, he found that many demonic plants had withered and died. Another 50,000 kilometers in, the demonic plant venerable was fighting here. BM, rumble, crack, one after another, colossal creatures were fighting against an even larger colossal creature. There were many roots and vines growing on the body of the super behemoth, and the branches were as thick as dragons. They were wantonly in the ground and in the sea. When Han Fei saw this thing, he suddenly exclaimed, "Blood Sea Divine Wood Branch?" Han Fei had seen this thing before. In the past, Yang Ruoyun took a piece and refined it into a secret treasure, which killed several of her teammates. At this moment, the Blood Sea Divine Wood Branch Han Fei saw was hundreds of millions of times larger than the one used by Yang Run. The old turtle said, "This is from the outside world. It's the king's domain Blood Sea Divine Wood. He is absorbing the power of the entire Forest of Terror." Absorbing the power of the Forest of Terror? Does he want to destroy the Forest of Terror? The old turtle sighed. I don't know. However, I'm sure that this branch has king-level power. Although it's only a part of its roots, it's still a king-level power. This is not something that ordinary venerables and some explorers can resist. In the field, the seven-colored light twisted and the seven-colored sponge shouted, "No, it's growing too fast and can continuously obtain energy from the Forest of Terror. Unless we cut off its absorption of energy." A big snake complained, "That's not going to work. We destroyed the Forest of Terror before, but this B***starred still explored new places by himself to absorb energy." Sea Bamboo said, "This creature is at least a pseudo-king. Could it be the Blood King?" Someone was speechless. How can the Blood King do that? Besides, the Blood King doesn't need to devour the Forest of Terror. If he really wanted to, why didn't he devour it before? A weird giant fish with thorns all over its body cursed, "Whether it has anything to do with him or not, this thing is from the outside world. It wants to devour the energy of the Forest of Terror. With such terrifying power, it's far stronger than all of us. The power of this demonic plant has already surpassed that of the Blood King." Ziluo asked, "The problem is, how do we deal with this thing now? It doesn't fight against us. It will only fight back when we kill it. We've tried many times these days. Even when we work together, it can still slowly devour the Forest of Terror. Unless we call back all the venerables on the front line. Otherwise, how can we resist this demonic plant?" Most people looked solemn. Someone murmured, "Are the demonic plants in the outside world so terrifying? I suspect that the Blood King has already been killed." Many people nodded. Although the Blood King is not weak, he's not good at fighting. Facing such a creature, it's almost impossible for him to survive. Someone felt lucky. Luckily, I didn't go to the outside world with him a few months ago. Otherwise, I'm afraid we would have died by now. While these people were discussing, Han Fei also said solemnly, Old Yuan, I'm afraid this matter has something to do with the fake king in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Is he going to transcend the tribulation? The old turtle nodded. Obviously. Although this forest of terror is not a good place. The power of the forest of terror in this territory of demonic plants is also very considerable. It's more than enough to help a person transcend the king tribulation. Han Fei snorted. It seems that he failed to lure it out last time. Now, he's taking the initiative to take revenge. However, he wants to transcend the king tribulation? How can it be so easy? Ignoring the demonic plants that were fighting with the Blood Sea Divine Wood, Han Fei looked for the Blood King's clone following the direction of the navigator. Such a big mess here must be caused by the Blood King's clone. Han Fei didn't want the Blood Sea Divine Wood to break the cage now. With his current strength, he still couldn't resist the chaos of the cage. The Blood Sea Divine Wood drilled holes everywhere on the bottom of the sea. Han Fei quietly touched the ground in the black fog and crawled into one of the holes. Like the turbid dust, Han Fei drilled in and out of the holes. 1 hour later, Han Fei easily touched the center of the Blood Sea Divine Wood's roots. Immediately, Han Fei saw a half-human, half-plant young man standing among the root. Under the young man's body, his roots were plunged into a green liquid. When he saw this, the old turtle immediately said, Kill him. He's drinking the earth vein spring water. That's a treasure comparable to the spring of life. Wow! Han Fei exclaimed, What did you say? That thing is comparable to the spring of life? How many F*** king drops are there? The old turtle shook his head. Not like that. In terms of drops, it is certainly not comparable to the spring of life. However, in terms of weight, it's almost the same. At most, 100 caddies of earth vein spring water is definitely comparable to a drop of the spring of life. Just here, I'm afraid it has tens of thousands of years of vitality. Han Fei's heart trembled. F***ck, if I put it in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, wouldn't it be easy to revive the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm? Although the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm had always been in my hands. However, Han Fei could at most throw some energy and spiritual energy into it. However, the air of death there was heavy, and the vitality was delicate. With Han Fei's ability, he could only slowly revive them. However, if he had this earth vein spring water, the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm would probably be revived immediately. Immediately, Han Fei quietly approached. He was determined to kill this Blood King's clone. Chapter 16:12. The Blood King's mood was very calm, but he was also extremely confident. For this tribulation, in order to become a king, and in order to become the strongest king of the Waterwood Heaven, he had prepared for this day for more than 30,000 years. The corners of his mouth curled up unconsciously. Although someone made trouble a few days ago and failed to lure them over, it didn't matter. However, it didn't matter. He couldn't wait any longer. He had suspected that there was something wrong with the cage a long time ago, which could be seen from the abnormal movements in the holy altar. Therefore, he had to take the opportunity to free himself. As for the others, they were just nutrients for him. Swish! Suddenly, the Blood King's divine soul shook. A spear light, without giving him any time to react, pierced through time and space, and directly pierced him. The Blood King didn't even have the chance to be shocked, or even open his eyes. Half of his body was pierced by the spear. And this was the effect of using the death substitution art at a critical moment. Otherwise, the power of that spear could directly blow him up. The next moment, he saw a sea demon in the shape of a shrimp soldier standing above the earth vein spring. As the shrimp soldier reached into the water, a large area of the earth vein spring disappeared without a trace. The moment Han Fei appeared, the Blood Sea Divine would move. However, Han Fei didn't just stand there and do nothing. He also took action. The blade purgatory had been formed, and everything in all directions that could be made into a knife became a knife at this moment. Seeing that his sneak attack failed to kill the Blood King, Han Fei took the opportunity to chase after him. He threw out the heavenly god's stab and the 100 beasts' soul-devouring roar at the same time. As soon as the Blood King came back to his senses and glanced at Han Fei, blood spurted out of his 7 orifices, and he was seriously injured. The Blood King's clone was shocked. Who is this person? The interval between these attacks was too short. Moreover, every blow was a top-killing move. According to his strength, this person was at least a half-king powerhouse. However, there were only a few half-monarchs in Black Blood City. He could count them all, and there was no such person. The Blood King was shocked. Thousands of vines surrounded him, and a tree spear condensed in his hand. However, when the tree spear condensed halfway, the Blood King was shocked to find that the road here had been blocked. This kid actually possesses such a heaven-defying technique? In the blink of an eye, the Blood King pressed his hand onto the tree. Countless roots appeared out of thin air and protected him. Han Fei sneered. The Blood Sea Divine Wood is a super tree after all. Even if he was in the King realm, could it be that his roots couldn't be broken? Han Fei turned into a large cloud of white mist. In reality, there was also a body of black mist within the body of white mist. In an instant, a hole was bitten out of the divine blood seawood root. The Blood King said coldly, "You were the one who foiled my plans the last time. Who are you?" The Blood King exclaimed. In an instant, most of his body was devoured by Han Fei. At the last moment, Han Fei's soul voice echoed, "Guess. Should I tell you or not?" Blood King. The Blood King's clone was eaten up by Han Fei. Under such circumstances, he did not have the ability to continue to die for them. After Han Fei got close, he was shocked to find that if he was careless, he would have no chance to fight back after Han Fei used the Heavenly Gate technique. With Han Fei's current strength, if he launched a sneak attack, no one in the Half-King realm could defeat him. In fact, it was not that this Blood King was not strong. Even if it was just a clone, how could a strong master who could open the cage seal be ordinary? However, no matter how strong he was, he couldn't withstand Han Fei's sneak attack. Han Fei took a batch of earth-veined spring water and weighed it. It weighed about 30,000 caddies. Han Fei's scalp went numb. "Old Yuan, did I get 30,000 years of vitality?" The old turtle said leisurely, "It should be. Your luck is really." The old turtle was extremely depressed. He couldn't understand why Han Fei could pick up such a big treasure. God knew. How long had the Blood King's clone been accumulating here? He had probably been accumulating since the Blood Sea Divine Wood burst out and grew here. With the power of the Blood Sea Divine Wood, he finally stole so much earth-veined spring water from the Forest of Terror. But he gave it all to Han Fei? Of course, Han Fei knew how important 30,000 years of vitality was. Even if he could enhance his vitality and longevity by absorbing the power of vitality spiritual fruits, it was only himself. If he spent 60,000 or 70,000 vitality spiritual fruits, others might need hundreds of thousands or even 200,000. This was determined by their respective paths. Who asked him to embark on the Tianqi Great Path. However, after a while, Han Fei immediately said, "Old Yuan, don't tell me. This earth-veined spring only has the effect of restoring vitality. It must have other uses, right?" In his knife array, Han Fei controlled the 10,000 knives to fight with the Blood Sea Divine Wood branches, while asking. The old turtle said, "Yes. If there is another use for the earth-veined spring, it is the luck of the earth vein. If it is scattered in a certain range of earth veins and refined, over time new earth veins will be formed. At that moment you would be able to obtain an endless supply of power in this world. You are not fighting alone, but relying on the earth vein." Speaking of this, Han Fei already understood. He sighed. So, the Blood King has been preparing for a long time. The reason why he could defeat 2 kings alone is that he borrowed the power of these earth veins under the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. So, he has been stealing the earth vein spring of the Forest of Terror for a long time? The old turtle said, I'm afraid so. Because in the cage, the energy supply is too fast, and the power of the earth vein in the Forest of Terror also recovers very fast. So, he stole slowly, and it was difficult for others to find out anything. Han Fei felt that his blood was freezing. This man was too cunning. Han Fei felt that this person was as cunning as old Han or Tang Yen. The Blood King was a king on both sides, but in fact, neither side was a real king. Bam, bam. Even if there were only some roots of the Blood Sea Divine Wood, they were the roots of a king. In just a few seconds, Han Fei's blade Purgatory was minced into pieces by those vines. However, at the last moment, Han Fei stepped on the ground and a teleportation array appeared. Immediately afterward, with a swish, Han Fei disappeared without a trace. At the moment when Han Fei disappeared, in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, a young man half lying on a branch of the Blood Sea Divine Wood slightly opened his eyes. He sat up slightly, looked into the depths of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, and grinned. Interesting. The doppelganger you left down there has been slaughtered. Although the Blood Sea Divine Wood can continue to steal earth vein spring water, it can't fall into our hands. It's meaningless to continue to steal. Beside this young man, there was another young man, and they even looked exactly the same. The young man said solemnly, My clone is at least at the half-king realm. How could he kill my clone under the cover of the Blood Sea Divine Wood? This person's strength is at least at the half-king realm. In the entire Forest of Terror, there are no more than 3 people who can do this. The lazy young man just now smiled lightly. Forget it. Anyway, I've taken a lot of earth vein spring water. Since the Blood Sea Divine Wood has drilled through the cage, let's do another round and see how many people we can catch. The Blood King looked at the young man and frowned slightly. Xuefan, I haven't finished yet. None of the 3 people I mentioned had a chance to take action. Remember what I told you a few months ago? Someone is secretly opposing me. Now that I think about it, maybe it's not necessarily someone from the Forest of Terror. The young man called Xuefan smiled disdainfully. So what? Does he dare to come up? Now everything is ready, and the earth vein spring water is barely enough. I've swallowed a lot of souls and you're back. Besides, I've parasitized the Blood Sea Divine Wood, which has corroded his mind. Now I'm the strongest in the world. As long as I pass the King Tribulation, the White Shell Royal City, and the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. They'll all be mine. In Forge the Universe, the old turtle was speechless. Han Fei is really cunning. After entering the space of the calabash, he pretended to escape through the teleportation array. If it were a human being, they might wonder why Han Fei's teleportation array was activated so quickly. However, the Blood Sea Divine Wood was a tree after all, and it didn't know much about human beings. Besides, it was only its roots that broke through the seal, and not necessarily a lot of consciousness followed. If it realized it too early and was killed by someone, the Blood Sea Divine would suffer a great loss. In Forge the Universe, Han Fei's first sentence was, Old Yuan, I found that the Blood Sea Divine Wood can't find me. The old turtle said leisurely, Don't jump to a conclusion so quickly. Obviously, these roots don't have much consciousness. Or, its consciousness isn't paying attention to you at all. Han Fei created a pit in Forge the Universe, which was specially used to hold the earth vein spring. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp and the others all rushed over. Bam! Bam! Han Fei kicked them away one by one. I'm warning you. If even one drop of the spring water is missing, I'll definitely peel off a layer of your skin. After teaching the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and the others a lesson, Han Fei rested for a day. Holding the 9-palace ruler of fortune as the ruler of fortune, he came to the ominous lot hexagram. Han Fei didn't take it seriously at that time. The word ominous only meant that it was slightly dangerous and not difficult for him. He had to go out and act according to circumstances. Chapter 16:13. Han Fei didn't know what the characteristics of the demonic plants in the king's territory were. For example, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree had a space like the Grand Illusionary Land, which could allow people living on it to enter and cultivate. Insert a perfect copy of the old version of the book Chasing Artifact. Source Swapping Artifact. This Blood Sea Divine Tree, as a king's territory, should have its own characteristic. However, at least for now, Han Fei hadn't found any special abilities. Even such a large root didn't find him. It didn't seem to be a king demonic plant. Swish! Han Fei appeared in the outside world again. Han Fei had made up his mind. Once the Blood Sea Divine Tree found him, he would rush out immediately. Even if he couldn't rush out, as long as he could hold on for a few seconds, he could create a teleportation array. However, when Han Fei appeared in the outside world, the old turtle said in surprise, "The branches of the Blood Sea Divine Tree are shrinking, and their coverage range is less than 30,000 kilometers. Han Fei said in surprise, "It doesn't even want the earth vein spring water anymore." The old turtle scoffed. "Didn't you rob it?" Han Fei raised his eyebrows. "It's a king demonic plant. If it really wants to eat it, will it be robbed by me?" The old turtle scoffed. "You can't say that. Although this Blood Sea Divine Tree can directly absorb the earth vein, don't forget, it doesn't want these earth veins spring water for its own cultivation. If this earth vein spring really enters the body of a king, and it's even a king of the plant monster race, it will be refined immediately." Han Fei smiled coldly. "So, it's a bargain for me. Now this guy is shrinking. Is it going to give up here? That's not a good thing. If the Blood King gave up the resources in the cage, it meant that the resources he could get were enough, and he could already pass the king's tribulation. Once the Blood King passed the tribulation, who knew how strong he would be? He would never allow such a thing to happen. After a while, Han Fei came to the edge of the roots of the Blood Sea Divine Tree. Han Fei saw an acquaintance, the man from the sea bamboo. This person didn't attack the Blood Sea Divine Tree. Every time the Blood Sea Divine Tree retreated a certain distance, he would advance a certain distance. The old turtle said, "In the Forest of Horrors, apart from the venerables that are fighting outside, all the other venerables should be here." After a while, those roots seemed to be pulled out, and the speed at which they were moving became faster and faster. In less than 6 hours, they were 10,000 li closer to the central region. Another 3 hours passed. When the Blood Sea Divine Wood roots could only cover a radius of 100 meters, the cracks in the void grew bigger and bigger. At this moment, all the monster plant venerables had gathered. Someone asked, "What's going on? Why isn't this thing expanding?" Someone sighed. "It's shrinking too fast. Could it be that he has given up on this place?" The void vine appeared and pointed at the crack in the void. "Look, I can feel that the void is being opened." Hiss. Hearing this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. "Does this mean the cage is being opened?" Haiju said, "Don't let your guard down." This root system was incomparably powerful. It first expanded its territory and absorbed the power of the earth veins. Now, it is tearing the void open. What's its purpose? Ziluo agreed. Yes, the power of this demonic plant has exceeded the so-called half-king realm. We can't defeat it even if we try our best. Even if we open the passage, whether we can get out safely. That's also a problem. A big half-king realm fish covered with thorns and tree warts said, "As soon as the Blood King left, this thing came. Is there any connection between the two?" At this moment, the Blood Sea Divine Wood didn't take action, so the monster plant venerables didn't take action either. Han Fei turned into a speck of dust under everyone's noses and watched. Crack, crack, crack on the seal of the cage. The crack was getting bigger and bigger. When it was 1,000 feet long, suddenly, in the void opposite the crack, a face was reflected. For a moment, the old face of the Blood King appeared in front of everyone. He said, "Oh, so you are all here." Ziluo and the others were also a little stunned. "The Blood King is not dead?" Haiju said in surprise, "Lord Blood King, what realm is this demonic plant in?" The Blood King said lightly, "The true King realm." This time, all the monster plant venerables who heard the Blood King's answer were dumbfounded. "True King? There are still true kings in this world?" The Blood King said, "I'll make a long story short. The situation outside is dangerous. This sea area is 8 million miles long, and 3 kings exist side by side. They are the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, the White Shell Royal City, and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, where I am now. We didn't completely leave the cage, but we're sealed in a larger area. I couldn't leave in the end, but I can become a king here." As he spoke, the Blood King's face disappeared, replaced by a strange creature that looked like a sea urchin. The big fish covered with thorns and tree warts said, 10,000 poison gall? You're still alive?" The sea urchin said, "Of course I'm still alive. I heard that you want to meet people from the outside world? I can only tell you that the environment here is much better than the cage. However, we still need to fight here. There are not many venerables in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, and I usually fight outside. I came back this time just to meet you." The next moment, the Blood King's projection appeared, and he said, "I don't care if you believe it or not, but I have to remind you that the Forest of Horrors has been invaded by someone, a super powerhouse who is at least at the half-monarch realm and can conceal himself. Do you think that the Divine Tree is absorbing the earth veins? Actually, it's not. While the Divine Tree is hunting that person, it is absorbing some of the power of the earth veins to open the cage. Unfortunately, that person still escaped." The Void Vine suddenly said, "I've said it before. I felt that there was something wrong with the void fluctuations several times. However, I couldn't find the source of the problem. You all know that too. However, no one came to ask about it." Serpent Man and the others perked up. Based on the current situation, it was indeed possible to go to the outside world. However, the outside world might not be any better than the cage. After all, as plants, they missed their homeland a little. However, to the venerables, the outside world had a fatal attraction: they could become kings outside. When they were fighting the Blood Sea Divine Wood, they felt that this thing was too strong. There were so many of them, but they couldn't defeat it. Even if they cut off a part of it, it could regenerate immediately. No matter how much these people didn't believe in the Blood King in the past. However, when the 10,000 poison bladder appeared, some people were tempted. Maybe they also had to fight in the outside world, but it was better than the Forest of Horrors, right? In the Forest of Horrors they also had to fight. And the most important thing was that they couldn't become kings here. Sea Bamboo said, "Lord Blood King, if we go over, what about the others on the periphery of the Forest of Horrors?" The Blood King said leisurely, "I've already said. Maybe in 100 years, this cage will definitely open. Even if it can't be opened by then, since I can open the channel now, I will definitely be able to open it in the future. You all think I study the cage all day, don't help you fight, and don't have a good relationship with you. So, you don't believe me. However, if I really want to trick you, I have the strength of a fake king after all. Do you think I'm really afraid of you?" The Blood King was still fooling the demonic plant venerable. It seemed that he was going to succeed. Han Fei's heart sank. This B** starred is actually advancing by retreating. At this time, if I make trouble, it will have a negative effect. After all, these demonic plant venerables don't believe me? The old turtle said, "You can't make trouble now." At this moment, several senses are scanning the surrounding tens of thousands of kilometers. They are waiting for you to take action in the dark. Once you take action, your identity as an infiltrator will be confirmed. Han Fei's heart sank and he continued to turn into dust, motionless. After a while, what Han Fei was worried about finally happened. At this time, more than half of the demonic plants chose to believe the Blood King. The big fish covered in tree warts was the first to choose to believe the Blood King. The girl Ziluo and the old man Sea Bamboo were probably born vigilant and felt that they could still wait for another 100 years. In fact, they also wanted the big fish to stay. After all, it was only a matter of 1,000 years. They were all half-king realms, and they had plenty of time in the future. However, at this moment they were not very convincing. It seemed that the Blood King really had no reason to trap and kill them. For a time, a total of 36 demons followed the big fish with tree wart. With the help of the dust caused by their movements, Han Fei quietly attached himself to the big snake vine. The reason why he chose the big snake vine was that its strength was only at the advanced venerable realm. Under his strong attack, he could kill it with one blow. Besides, this big snake vine didn't have the ability to discover his existence. The Blood King said, "Ziluo, Sea Bamboo, I know you have concerns. Since you don't want to come, then inform Qianlong and the others. Send someone to pay attention to this place. After this, when the time is right, I will open this cage again. Poisonous dragon bile, you are a half-king, so when you come over, some void cracks will appear. You are not weak, so you can help others support the cracks and bring them over." 10,000 poison gallbladder, poisonous dragon bile? Han Fei's heart did a flip. Is this big fish actually a sea urchin? The Blood King's purpose was to use the 10,000 poison gallbladder to fool these people and make them believe that. He even left a sentence before leaving, so the others would naturally be much more relieved and let down their guard. Not only that, but he also encouraged the venerables on the border to go over. Han Fei thought to himself, this Blood King is really scheming. Not only is he good at scheming, but he is also very patient. It was his clone that was killed by Han Fei, but in the end, he tricked 36 demonic plant venerables out of the cage. Han Fei thought for a moment. According to the 9-palace ruler of fortune, today was a bad day for him. Indeed, his luck was not very good. However, he still had to go over,